I skipped the family cruise, and my parents went crazy because they treat me poorly and idolize my brother. I'm not even sure when it began, but I felt like my brother Adam and I belonged to two different households. Perhaps I first became aware of the obvious difference in how we were treated in high school. Adam had been found to be a drug dealer. My parents said it wasn't a huge thing, just a difficult time he was going through. However, after I was found smoking marijuana, it seemed as though I had set the home on fire. My mind was racing as my parents, Richard and Beth, threatened to expel me. My parents would give Adam a blanket and claim he was merely experimenting, but I recognized then that Adam might set the world on fire. Me? They would contact the fire department and I could light a match. This disparity simply widened over time. Adam, frequently referred to as the golden child, left college 3 times. My parents dismissed it as inconsequential each time. He's still finding himself, they would say. In the meantime, they chastised me for not trying hard enough, and I graduated from college a semester late. My achievements never seemed sufficient. I got my first serious work as a technical writer by the time I was 22 in 2020. I was really pleased with myself. However, that moment was short-lived. I was immediately removed from my parents' health insurance. They cut me off entirely as a kind of reward for my independence, proof that I could manage alone. Adam, meanwhile, continued to be covered by their insurance until last year, when he turned 26. I had to stand on my own 2 feet for 4 more years, whether I was ready or not, while still being treated like a child. The imbalance grew unavoidable over time. Adam continued to reside in Colorado, the state where he had left college. My parents paid him money for basics, bills, and rent even though he didn't work or attend school. With this assistance, what did he do? Yes, he purchased a $22,000 dog for himself. I recall listening to my parents rave about Adam's new German Shepherd, Max, as I sat in my tiny apartment making a grocery budget. The worst of it was when I was fired in early 2023 at the age of 24. Due to the company's downsizing, I was no longer able to afford rent. I was forced to return to Oklahoma City, my hometown. My parents made me feel much more like a failure than I already did. I found a new position in May 2023 after months of looking for work. They surprised me by claiming I owed them $10,000 in unpaid rent on the day I happily informed them of my new job. Yes, you read correctly, $10,000. When I moved in, we hadn't even talked about rent. My parents agreed to let me stay till I recovered. I helped out where I could by doing freelance work and contributing to groceries. But all of a sudden, they determined that I owed them for each month that I had been there. I was aware that resisting would just exacerbate the situation. Confrontation was never well received by Beth or Richard. I made the payment. I worked really hard, saved as much money as I could, and paid them off by September 2023, right before I moved in with my lover Tom. The problem with my parents is that, even after Adam depleted their finances for his unsuccessful college attempts, they never asked for anything from him. But me? They were prepared to take advantage of me as soon as I had a steady job. I still hear my mother say, "We're just motivating you to be independent, Sarah." I wanted to yell, I was self-sufficient already. I had been all along. The cruise was the last straw. My parents revealed their ambitious idea for a family trip in late September. They suggested it would be a lovely, week-long Thanksgiving vacation, a cruise. I recall how my mother's face brightened as she talked about how much fun we would have and how wonderful it would be if Adam and his girlfriend Laura could come. "Since you have a good job now, you can buy your own ticket," she added after giving me a quick glance. I was hit hard by the remarks. I was taken aback. "Wait, you're paying for everyone else but not me?" I responded. My mom rehearsed the statement. "Adam's still finding his way. And Laura's family isn't well off. You can afford it, Sarah. It's not like you'd need a fancy room anyway." As if I should be thankful for simply being on the boat, crammed into a windowless cabin like an afterthought, they rationalized, "Not a fancy room." I wished to draw attention to the hypocrisy. Why was Adam receiving a suite if the rooms weren't important? If he was still finding himself at almost 30, why wasn't he paying his own expenses? I, of course, argued. I could afford the ticket, so it wasn't about the money. It has to do with justice. But when it comes to Adam, there is no such thing as fairness in my family. "Green isn't a good look on you, Sarah," my mother replied, shaking her head. "Green? Jealousy? More than anything, I detest that word. They always use it as an excuse, as if my annoyance is unjustified and my emotions are unworthy simply because I don't accept their obvious partiality. That evening, I left their home in a rage. Tom, who has always been there for me, advised me not to go. "You don't owe them this," he stated. I agreed with him for the first time, I decided that I was not going. There was silence in the weeks before Thanksgiving. I always change my mind, so my parents believed I would too. They believe I'm too terrified to upset the status quo and too weak to confront them. I let them believe it this time, though. I didn't let them know I wouldn't be attending. As they confirmed their plans, made hotel reservations, and discussed all of the excursions they would be going on, I remained silent. They didn't text me until the evening before the trip. Be here by 8 a.m., so we can drive to New Orleans. Don't be late, wrote my dad. With my chest constricted, I gazed at the message. I then replied as follows. Since you didn't think I was worth the effort to include, I'll be spending Thanksgiving with Tom's family instead. Have a great trip with your favorite child. I then turned off the group chat. I felt powerful for the first time in years, as like I was choosing myself above their unachievable demands. I accepted the invitation from Tom's family to spend Thanksgiving at their cabin in Arkansas. I owed my parents nothing, not my money, not my time, and definitely not an apology. Tom grinned and gave me a forehead kiss when I informed him about the text. When he said, "Good for you," I wish I could describe how fantastic it felt. It didn't, at least not yet. Even when you know you're right, there's something about confronting your parents that makes you feel uneasy. However, I had had enough of being their afterthought. I had had enough of second place. There was silence in my flat on the morning of the cruise. Like the quiet before a storm, an odd silence descended upon everything. I stared at my muted phone while sipping my coffee. I knew they would begin messaging me shortly to inquire about my whereabouts and to remind me that the car was scheduled to depart in 30 minutes. My dad calling to inquire whether I needed gas money for the drive was something I partially expected. My phone vibrated on the counter at 8:15. As I let it buzz, I saw it glow against the rock like a firefly. Where are you? It's past 8. We're waiting. I saw my mother looking at the clock and shaking her head, and I could almost hear her sigh of impatience. My dad had joined in by 8:30, using his typical direct tone. Sarah, we are leaving for the port in 10 minutes. You need to hurry up. I had been rushing to fulfill their expectations, which weren't the same for Adam, for years. I could see my brother, half sleeping in the back seat of the car, laughing and cheerful. He most likely didn't even realize or give a damn that I wasn't coming. Rubbing his eyes from sleep, Tom entered the kitchen. As he poured himself a cup of coffee, he inquired, "They text you yet?" When I answered, "Of course they did. They'll figure it out soon enough." He gave me the look that indicated, "I know this is difficult, but I'm proud of you." It was too. Despite my desire to feel victorious, I was unable to do so. I felt as though a brick had been placed against my heart. I asked abruptly, "Do you think I'm being petty?" Tom took a seat across from me and spoke in a steady, calm tone. "Sarah, they made this choice. You're just showing them what it feels like to be left out. But they're my parents. I shouldn't." Tom put his elbows on the table and leaned forward. "Your parents treat Adam like he walks on water and act like you're a burden. You've bent over backward for them your whole life. You are not being petty, you're setting a boundary." Despite the fact that my stomach ached, I nodded. Their texts became increasingly desperate as the group chat began to hum once more. At last, I grabbed my phone, typed one message, and pressed send. "Since you didn't put in the effort to include me, I will be attending Thanksgiving with Tom's family instead. Have a great trip with your favorite child." I then placed the phone face down on the table and muted the conversation. Tom gave a small smile. "You're allowed to put yourself first, Sarah." All I could hope was that it would begin to feel that way. We prepared Tom's vehicle for the trip to his family's cabin that afternoon. Months before, almost as an afterthought, his mother, Linda, had extended an invitation to me. She had called and said, "We'd love to have you join us for Thanksgiving if you're free." I dismissed it at the moment, thinking I would be with my own family. Now it seemed weird, like if the cosmos had known all along. My chest started to relax as we made our way toward the cabin along winding back roads. The naked trees of late November stretched out like bony fingers toward the pale sky as the surrounding area opened up around us. I allowed the silence to envelop me like a blanket as I gazed out the window. After some time, Tom said, "Are you okay?" "I will be," I muttered. I wanted it to be true, but I wasn't sure whether it was. We were warmly received by Tom's family. His mother waved and smiled broadly as soon as we drew into the driveway and came out onto the porch. Like a cozy fire on a chilly night, Linda was one of those people who instantly put you at rest. "I'm so glad you're here, Sarah," she said as she came down the stairs to give me a hug. I returned her hug with a smile. "Thank you for having me." "Of course. We're thrilled to have you join us. Tom, grab her bags and get inside before you both freeze." The aroma of freshly baked pies and roasting turkey filled the cabin like a warm remembrance. While Tom's younger relatives raced around the living room, Tom's father, Paul, was in the kitchen basting the turkey. I couldn't recall the last time I had entered a family get-together and felt accepted and included. With a kind grin, Linda gave me a glass of wine. "Your family here, Sarah. Relax and enjoy yourself." Even though it was the most straightforward thing, I almost started crying. Tom and I got up early the following day, Thanksgiving morning, to assist with the preparations. While she and Paul worked on the food, his mother assigned us to arrange the table. The clatter of dishes, music, and laughter filled the place with vitality. Like a scene from a movie I'd always wanted to be in, it was crazy in the greatest way. I smiled as I watched Tom fold napkins into tidy triangles. "What?" He smiled at me and inquired. "Nothing," I replied. "It's just nice being here." He grabbed my hand and squeezed it. "You deserve this, Sarah." We went outdoors to play cornhole with Tom's cousins after supper. Naturally, I was awful. My aim was as precise as a kid throwing darts while wearing a blindfold. However, no one gave a damn. Tom burst out laughing as I missed the board entirely for the third time. He put an arm around my shoulder and teasingly said, "You're hopeless." "I'm trying my best," I answered, sharing his laughter. From across the yard, his cousin Ellie, who couldn't have been older than 12, spoke up. "You're doing great, Sarah. My mom says it's about having fun, not winning." I grinned. "I'll take it." We gathered around the fire pit that night, drinking hot cocoa while covered in blankets. Linda distributed marshmallows to be roasted. I felt calmer than I have in years as I watched the flames dance before me. I was treated like a member of Tom's family. No one made me feel alienated or asked me where I belonged. I didn't feel the need to prove myself to anyone for once. Linda smiled softly at me as we sat gazing at the flickering embers toward the end of the night. "Sarah, I know this is ultimately up to Tom, but I hope you'll join our family for real someday." I was taken aback by what she said, and my cheeks began to blush. I muttered, "I would be honored." Then, I meant it too. I felt lighter than I had in a long time as I laid in bed with Tom that night and looked up at the ceiling. Whispering, "Thank you for bringing me here." Tom turned over on his side and gave me a look. "You're welcome. But you don't have to thank me, Sarah. You belong here." His words sank in like rain after a drought, and I blinked back tears. This was where I belonged. I didn't have to plead for morsels of affection or struggle for a seat at the table. As I was sufficient. I felt free for the first time in my life. The Saturday following Thanksgiving, I felt lighter than I had in months when I woke up. With laughter, food, warmth, and no expectations other than simply being there, Tom's family made things seem so easy. You don't have to earn that kind of love, and I didn't understand how hungry I was for it. It was a quiet drive back to Dallas. As we discussed everything and nothing, including our plans for Christmas, future hikes, and how awful I was at cornhole, the trees outside became hazy striations of brown and yellow. Over the course of those few hours, I laughed more than I had all year. However, such lightness was short-lived. I finally picked up my phone when we returned to my place. I nearly felt bad about turning it back on after not checking it all weekend. With dozens of unread messages, pictures, and even a few missed calls, the group chat had blown up. As the screen filled with notifications, I gazed at it. There were photos from the cruise. One of my parents, smiling and sunburned, drinking, another of Adam and Laura on the ship's deck, with the ocean behind them like an infinite blue dream. Then the texts arrived. "Sad that you chose not to be with your family in such beautiful places." In those remarks, I could practically hear my dad's voice, composed, measured, and tinged with a hint of judgment. He never used the exact words, but it was the kind of message that made me feel bad. As I continued to scroll, I came across a text from my mother. "You should have been there. I hope you realize what you missed out on." What did I miss? I pondered. But what did they miss? What about how they treated me as though I wasn't important enough to start with? I read the text again and again while sitting on the edge of the couch, my cheeks flushed. Tom saw right away. He put his arm around my shoulders and sat down next to me. What did they say? To let him see, I held out the phone. Silently. "Same old story," I muttered. "I should feel bad for missing out, not the other way around." Tom let out a sigh. "You don't have to justify your choices to them, Sarah." I answered. "I know, but I didn't feel like I knew anything." My mom's name appeared on my phone a few minutes later. A tiny part of me that still yearned for their acceptance picked up the phone when I considered ignoring it. She said, "Where were you?" right away. Although it wasn't soft, her voice wasn't angry either. Like a question with only one valid response, it was incisive. I told you, I said, attempting to sound steady. I spent the holiday with Tom's family. You could have told us sooner, Sarah, she replied. Do you know how cruel it was for you to let us believe you were coming and then just not show up? I tried to suppress my fury by closing my eyes. Mom, you told me to buy my own ticket, you didn't make me feel like I was part of the plan. She became defensive in tone. We told you because you can afford it. It's not like you're struggling, Sarah. Adam and Laura needed the help. Even though I detested that it was, I said, my voice trembling now. And I didn't? Mom, I've spent my whole life having to earn everything. You've handed Adam everything on a silver platter, and I'm the one who gets called ungrateful. She yelled. That's not fair, Sarah. Adam needs help right now. You've always been independent. You don't understand how hard it is for him. She seemed to have slapped me. I swallowed the old, familiar frustration that tried to get up my throat. I muttered, I'm independent because you never gave me a choice. She was silent for a long time. At last, she stated, I'm not going to apologize for raising a strong daughter. You should be grateful for everything we've done for you. The phrase grateful felt like sandpaper against my flesh. All my life, I had been thankful for crumbs of affection, for unmet expectations, and for family holidays to which I was not invited unless I covered the cost myself. I was at my breaking point. I guess I'll just leave you alone, I replied. Since I'll never be enough for this family anyway. Before she could reply, I hung up, and the tears eventually came. With my entire body trembling, I buried my face in my hands. Immediately, Tom was there, sitting beside me and embracing me. It's okay, he muttered. You're okay. However, I didn't feel well. No matter how many times Tom assured me that I was sufficient, I knew that my parents would never be able to fill the void in my heart. Tom and I shared a pint of ice cream on the couch for the remainder of the evening. In an attempt to escape the weight of it all, we watched old films. Even though the tears were still threatening to come back, I allowed myself to laugh when Tom cited the corny dialogue. I felt empty by the time I went to bed. I got up early for work the following morning. There was silence on my phone. Don't text. No calls were missed. In some ways, my parents' silence was worse than their rage. They seemed to be waiting for me to say I was sorry and that I had overreacted, as I often had in the past. But I wasn't going to this time. I immersed myself in my job, utilizing the diversion to prevent myself from reflecting on everything that had transpired. I sent emails, revised technical manuals, and acted as if nothing was wrong. When my coworkers inquired about my Thanksgiving, I consistently responded with the same response. It was nice, I spent it with Tom's family. I kept the argument with my parents a secret from them. I kept the pictures, the texts, and the phone call that left me sobbing on the couch a secret from them. In actuality, I was ashamed. Shame that after everything they had done to me, I still desperately craved their acceptance. Tom and I sat on my apartment's balcony that evening and watched the distant blinking city lights. At last, I said, I don't know why it's so hard. Because they're your parents, Tom said. You want them to love you the way you deserve. That's not a bad thing, Sarah. I muttered. But what if they never will? After a period of silence, Tom said, then maybe you have to stop asking for it. I knew he was right, so his comments were like a kick to the belly. I had begged for something my parents couldn't provide me with all my life. Perhaps it was time to give up. However, I wasn't yet prepared. My mother texted me when I woke up the following morning. We need to talk before Christmas. Let us know when you're free. I placed my phone down after staring at the message for a while. Christmas. That meant something to me. They didn't want the rest of the family to know why I wasn't there. They would want me to act like nothing had occurred, play nice, and smile for photos. However, I wasn't sure if I could still do it. I didn't anticipate how much the weeks before Christmas would weigh on me. Like a burden I couldn't release, my mom's text about having to talk hung in the back of my mind. At first, I thought they would just disregard it. However, I was acquainted with my parents. They weren't the type to tolerate unresolved conflict, particularly if it meant looking foolish in front of the other family members. I still hadn't responded by the middle of December, and the messages began to come in once more. My dad joined in this time. We can't just leave things like this, Sarah. Family means something. Let us know when we can talk. Family means something. I sat with those words for a long time, mentally reciting them over and over again. How did they define family? She said, where were you? Right away. Although it wasn't soft, her voice wasn't angry either. Like a question with only one valid response, it was incisive. I told you, I said, attempting to sound steady. I spent the holiday with Tom's family. You could have told us sooner, Sarah, she replied. Do you know how cruel it was for you to let us believe you were coming and then just not show up? I tried to suppress my fury by closing my eyes. Mom, you told me to buy my own ticket. You didn't make me feel like I was part of the plan. She became defensive in tone. We told you because you can afford it. It's not like you're struggling, Sarah. Adam and Laura needed the help. Even though I detested that it was, I said, my voice trembling now. And I didn't? Mom, I've spent my whole life having to earn everything. You've handed Adam everything on a silver platter, and I'm the one who gets called ungrateful. She yelled. That's not fair, Sarah. Adam needs help right now. You've always been independent, you don't understand how hard it is for him. She seemed to have slapped me. I swallowed the old, familiar frustration that tried to get up my throat. I muttered, I'm independent because you never gave me a choice. She was silent for a long time. At last, she stated, I'm not going to apologize for raising a strong daughter. You should be grateful for everything we've done for you. The phrase grateful felt like sandpaper against my flesh. All my life, I had been thankful for crumbs of affection, for unmet expectations, and for family holidays to which I was not invited unless I covered the cost myself. I was at my breaking point. I guess I'll just leave you alone, I replied. Since I'll never be enough for this family anyway. Before she could reply, I hung up, and the tears eventually came. Tom discovered me sitting at the table with my head in my hands in the kitchen that evening. I had been mentally going over the exchange with my mother over and again, analyzing each word, tone, and pause. Tom gently pulled out a chair to sit across from me and asked, What happened? They want me to come for Christmas, I replied. She didn't apologize though, not really. It's like they don't even understand what they've done. With a groan, Tom reached for my hand. Do you want to go? I gave a headshake. I don't know. I mean, part of me wants to, it's Christmas. I don't want to lose my whole family, but it hurts to keep pretending nothing's wrong, he concluded for me. Yeah, I muttered. Tom gave me a handshake. Then don't go, Sarah. You don't have to keep putting yourself in situations that hurt you. But if I don't go, they'll tell everyone I'm being selfish, I replied. They'll make it sound like I'm the problem. My mom knows how to twist things so it looks like I'm the bad guy. Tom remained silent for a while, as if he was attempting to find the proper words. Then he stated, It doesn't matter what they tell other people. You know the truth. I could feel the pressure building as Christmas drew near. My mother contacted me twice more and left identical-sounding voicemails. She desired to make things more amicable. She desired the family's unity. She wished for me to let go of the past. I didn't return her call. My dad eventually sent a message the day before Christmas Eve. This has gone on long enough, Sarah. You're coming to Christmas. We'll talk it out like adults, and then we'll move forward. It was an order, not a request. Before I erased the message, I looked at it for a while. Tom and I packed the car and headed back to his parents' property on Christmas Day. As if she had been waiting for us all morning, Linda welcomed us with a platter of cookies and a loving embrace. Squeezing my arm, she added, I'm so glad you're here. I grinned, but my eyes didn't see it. I knew my parents would spend the day acting like everything was fine, but the truth was that I felt bad, guilty for not being with them. I pictured them at the dinner table, with my mom passing around the mashed potatoes and Adam giggling at something. I pondered whether they would inform everyone that I was too busy to go or that I was simply being challenging once more. I must have been deep in thought when Tom bent over and said in a whisper, Hey, you don't have to feel bad about choosing yourself. I know, I muttered. His family and I sat by the fire that afternoon and opened gifts. Tom's father gave me a mug that read, You're part of the family, whether you like it or not. And Linda gave me a knitted scarf that was the softest thing I had ever felt. I almost started crying, but everyone laughed. I now understood what Christmas could be like for the first time in my life, cozy, stress-free, and effortless. No one was being cautious, no one was keeping score. It was love, pure and unreserved. I grinned as I turned to face Tom. Perhaps this was how family was meant to feel. For once, I didn't feel like I was stepping on a minefield as Christmas went by in silence. There were no harsh words, tight smiles, or passive-aggressive remarks to spoil the occasion, and Tom's family made the holiday feel effortless. After holding my breath for too long, I felt calm when I woke up the following morning, as though I had finally figured out what it meant to release it. However, that tranquility was short-lived. After 2 days, I turned my phone back on and discovered just what I had anticipated. Texts, voicemails, and missed calls. My absence had not gone overlooked, and my family had spent the holiday together. Late on Christmas night, my mother sent a message. "We missed you today, Sarah. Your absence really hurt your father." That was it. There were no explanations, no attempt to find out why I had avoided them, and no expression of regret for how they had made me feel so inferior. Rather, the responsibility had returned to me. The issue was me. They had been harmed by me. My parents seemed to live in a whole separate reality, where my emotions were non-existent unless they caused annoyance to another else. The shame hung like smoke in the back of my mind, but I chose to disregard the message and resume my life. A part of me knew that the decision I had taken was the right one. Why, though, did everything still feel so off? A few days later, Tom and I were watching a movie when my phone called. It was Adam, my brother. I hesitated when I saw his name on the screen. Adam didn't call me very much. He preferred to keep his hands clean and avoided getting involved in any arguments with our parents most of the time. Quietly, I asked Tom, "Should I answer it?" His words, "It's up to you," came as he squeezed my hand. After a moment of hesitation, I swiped the screen. "Hello? Sarah," Adam remarked in a cool, clipped voice. "What the hell happened?" I let out a sigh. "What do you mean?" "I mean Christmas," he continued, his voice beginning to grow irritated. "Mom and Dad were a wreck. They said you just ignored them and ruined the holiday." I saw my jaw getting tense. "I didn't ruin anything, Adam. I chose not to come because I'm tired of being treated like I don't matter." Adam exhaled heavily, the way he always did when he felt I was being tough. "Why do you have to make everything a big deal, Sarah? They're trying their best." "No, they're not," I remarked sharply. "Adam, they treat you like you're perfect. They pay for everything you need and never expect you to stand on your own. Meanwhile, I get $10,000 in rent thrown at me the second I get a new job. Do you not see how unfair that is?" Adam's comments, "You're just jealous," were as recognizable as an old scar. "You always have been." Again, that word. Jealous. As if my desire for justice made me the bad guy. With my voice trembling, I tightened my hold on the phone. "I'm not jealous, Adam. I'm exhausted. You get to make mistakes and get help. I don't. I have to be perfect just to earn the bare minimum, and I'm tired of it. Maybe if you stopped acting like a victim, they'd treat you differently." Adam replied bluntly. I thought he had slapped me. I was momentarily unable to even reply. That one sentence seemed to crush every shred of hope I had ever had for my brother. He was unable to comprehend. He didn't. I was the issue for him. It was me who created the commotion. At that moment, I understood that I had been mistaken to believe that Adam may one day see things for what they truly were. I replied softly, "Goodbye, Adam," and hung up before he could answer. I hid my face in my hands and placed the phone on the table. Even though I didn't want to cry, I did. Without a word, Tom grabbed me into his arms and let me express everything. "He doesn't get it," I muttered after some time. "He never will." "I know," Tom said. "But that's not your fault, Sarah." I couldn't stop thinking about that phone talk with Adam in the days that followed. I repeatedly rehearsed his remarks in my mind in the hopes that they might lessen the pain. However, they didn't. I reflected on how close we had been as children. Adam was my hero back then. He stayed up late playing video games with me and taught me how to ride a bike. When I was being teased at school, he was the one who defended me. I had believed that Adam was the only one who truly understood me. However, things had changed at some point. Adam had been more than glad to take the perks my parents gave him without question, and their partiality had caused a rift between us. I wanted to think he still secretly cared for me. In actuality, though, he had sided with them. Perhaps he didn't think so. Perhaps he believed he was merely maintaining harmony. However, it seemed like a betrayal to me. Although I wasn't convinced that version of my brother still existed, I still missed him. Tom and I observed the city lights one evening while sitting on the balcony, covered with blankets. After a hard day, the crisp but chilly air felt rejuvenating, like a reset button. "I've been thinking," I muttered. "About what?" Tom asked me as he turned to face me. "About cutting contact with them," I replied. Speaking the words aloud felt liberating, but they also felt heavy. "I mean, not completely. Not yet. But maybe I need to put some real distance between us. I need a break from all of this." Tom gave a nod. "You don't have to explain it to me, Sarah. I think it's the right move." The words, I feel guilty," I said. "They're still my family. And if I walk away, they'll tell everyone I'm the problem. I don't want to lose the rest of my family too." Tom grabbed my hand as he reached over. Sarah, you can't control what they say about you. You can't change the way they see things. But you don't deserve to keep putting yourself through this just to make them happy. I took a deep breath while gazing at the skyline. I don't know if I'm strong enough to do it. You are, Tom asserted decisively. You've been strong your whole life, Sarah. But this time, you're being strong for yourself. That's different. I listened to what he had to say. Perhaps he was correct. I had spent years trying to prove myself to my parents and going out of my way to get their love and acceptance. But it was never enough, no matter how hard I tried. Perhaps it was time to give up. Perhaps I should have chosen myself instead. I took a seat that evening and composed a letter to my parents. Mom, Dad, for a while, I need some space. I love you both, but I can't keep acting like everything is all right when it's not. I'm sick of being compared to Adam and feeling unimportant. I need time to decide what kind of relationship I want with you, so I need to take a break until then. I hope you understand. Before I pushed submit, I looked at the message for a long time. I experienced a peculiar sensation of relief when I eventually did, as if I had finally let go of something I had been clinging to for too long. With his hand on my knee, Tom sat next to me. How do you feel? Scared, was my honest response. But also, lighter. He smiled as he remarked, that's a good start. And I believed him for the first time in years. My stepmother and father are leaving me alone and going on a honeymoon with their daughters, so I made sure they don't come back into my house. She died of a stroke last year at the age of 47, leaving me this house as an inheritance. Although it came as a shock, I've come to terms with it. My parents shared custody of me after divorcing when I was 7 years old. I was with my mom for half the month and my dad for the other half. I must admit that because my mother understood me, we were closer. My 50-year-old father was always a little too busy for me. I received the impression that he was more focused on his work and ladies than he was on me. He didn't seem to prioritize me, but as long as I had my mother, I didn't mind. My dad made the decision to relocate to Houston for work a few years ago, shortly after I turned 18 and enrolled in college. We only met around the holidays and began to see each other less frequently. He joined us in celebrating Christmas 2 years ago with his then-girlfriend, 38-year-old Julia. She also brought her 2 daughters from her former relationship with her high school sweetheart, who are 16 and 18 years old. Before she began dating my dad, they had broken up for almost 7 years but had never been married. My dad had never brought a girlfriend to family gatherings, so we were taken aback. Nevertheless, we made every effort to make Julia and her girls feel at home and welcome them as warmly as possible. We all seemed to get along well at the time, and it was a very lovely evening. Even after that, Julia would always greet me when I called my dad, and she was really kind to me. Her daughters tended to keep to themselves because they were a little shy and introverted. Our relationship was nice overall. I learned that my mother left me the house after she died. Luckily, my mother always loved to plan ahead, especially in serious instances like these, so she distributed all of her assets in her will around the time I turned 18. I made the decision to move in and look for a job that wouldn't require me to relocate anytime soon because I had recently finished. I was comfortable in my childhood house, so I wanted to stay there for the next few years. After learning about the will, my dad made sure I knew that he wasn't pleased with my mom's choice. My dad was a little depressed when he realized he wouldn't be getting the house back, but he and Julia had been quite kind and encouraging at the funeral. My mom took over this house during the divorce, but my parents purchased it together when they first got married. Even though my mom sacrificed her job to stay at home and raise me so my dad could concentrate on his business, it was a fair arrangement because he got away with not paying alimony. In my opinion, it was entirely reasonable to keep the house in the settlement and release my dad from alimony. With some assistance from her parents, my mom recovered later, and she even made sure I never felt ignored or unimportant. She was good at both jobs. My dad was furious about not getting the house back, but I didn't mind. Although he didn't discuss it much, I could tell by his actions that he wasn't pleased about it. Since I was still grieving over my mother at the time and my dad's anger over her will was the least of my concerns, I didn't give a damn. It should have been sufficient for him because she had left him all of her bridal jewelry and the presents he had given her. A few weeks after the funeral, he and Julia returned to Houston, and I've been living here alone ever since. But my dad told me around 6 months ago that he was now engaged to Julia and that he planned to marry her in his house. It didn't make sense to remain in a hotel when there was a property with enough more rooms, so he intended to return here in the weeks before the wedding. In order to avoid any problems with schools, her daughters were likewise homeschooled. For a few reasons, I agreed with him and let them move into my home and reside with me before the wedding. Since Julia and I got along well and I was sick of living alone, I didn't see any issues with letting them live with me. Additionally, I didn't have to worry about going over budget because my dad promised to split all of the costs with me while they were living here. They have been here ever since they moved in with me almost a month ago. I felt a lot less lonely than I did when I lived alone, and it was good to have them around. I believed I could adjust to this. I even looked forward to the day they all left and returned to their regular lives since I would have to do the same thing by myself. However, my dad asked me whether I would be open to letting them all reside here permanently 2 weeks ago, 3 days prior to the wedding. He stated that he had returned here to help me feel a little more at ease with the notion of living with him and becoming a member of a family, which was completely unexpected. The thought of me living here alone didn't sit well with him. Now that he believed we were getting along, he wanted to know if I would be open to making this a permanent arrangement, which he intended to introduce to me gradually. I wanted to say yes at once, but I was a little perplexed by his actions after learning that he wouldn't be getting the house back. I didn't believe it was a good idea to make it a permanent arrangement so soon, even though I would have wanted to. I didn't want to act on my feelings and make a mistake. I didn't have to let them all live with me, even though I knew this was the only sensible way to deal with my intense loneliness. They had barely been residing here for a month. I told him I needed some time to ponder, even though I really wanted to say yes. For whatever reason, I had a gut feeling that it would be best for me to wait and not make a hurried choice. I put aside my sentiments and promised to let him know what I had decided after the wedding. Although he didn't bring up the subject, he appeared upset. We had a terrific time at their wedding, which took place 10 days ago. After the wedding, they were expected to remain here for a few more days before going back home. They all went off on their honeymoon without telling me, just as I was about to tell them what I had decided. Everyone had left when I woke up 2 days after their wedding, leaving me all by myself. I decided to call since many of their possessions were still at my place, but nobody picked up for a while. I kept worrying about it. For hours, I was unable to contact them, even though I had intended to inform them of my choice that same day. When Julia finally responded at lunchtime, she nonchalantly told me that they had all left for their honeymoon and wouldn't be returning for a week. I was taken aback because I clearly thought that even if I wasn't part of their plans, they would at least tell me about them before departing. I didn't want to sound petty, but I felt insulted that they hadn't asked me. I began by questioning why none of this had been communicated to me. Using the pathetic excuse that they had failed to inform me, she promised me that they would return shortly. That wasn't the purpose at all, I attempted to explain. My problem was that it was impolite of them to just walk out without saying anything or even saying goodbye. Her tone shifted when I mentioned that I wanted to speak with my dad. She claimed that my dad was too busy to speak with me. Nevertheless, I made an effort to remain composed and instructed her to notify me when he had some free time so that I could speak with him personally. I expressed it courteously, but she changed her attitude entirely. She changed from being kind to harsh and savage. She advised me not to worry them and informed me that my dad would be busy for the next few days. There was no need to act so hysterically just because they left me behind, she continued. She then felt compelled to remind me that I was no longer a child and that I had to come to terms with the fact that my dad had a new family. She went on to say that she wanted me to quit thinking about myself and tidy the house for them when they got home. She wasn't going to speak to me in that manner, and I'm not sure to whom she thought she was speaking. When she said that, she immediately hung up, and I was immediately furious. After seeing this side of his new wife, I thanked the world for keeping me from accepting my dad's offer and decided not to call him again. They were not going to live with me in any way. I therefore packed everything they owned as haphazardly and shoddily as I could, crammed it all into a few cardboard boxes, and left it in the yard for them to discover when they made the decision to come back. Since such items didn't belong to me and didn't belong in a house that belonged to me, I didn't give a damn what would happen to them. After that, I carried on with my life as usual, making an effort to ignore the sense of betrayal I had experienced due to my dad's senseless actions. They finally got back from their honeymoon yesterday. Fortunately, they discovered all of their belongings in the yard while I was at work. In the interim, I also replaced the door locks, which prevented them from entering. When my dad called me about it, he was furious. Since they hadn't done anything illegal and leaving me at home without warning wasn't something to be upset about, he told me I was being a spoiled child and that I was overreacting. I instructed him to get his boxes and go, and I would call the police if I saw them on my property when I got home. I couldn't waste time worrying about it because I had to return to work after he insulted me and hung up. They had taken their belongings and left when I arrived home from work. That seemed to be the end of it. The worst part, however, was still to come. My dad called me at midnight to let me know that Julia had something to say to me. She retracted everything she had said and expressed regret for the way she had spoken to me. She went on to say that she didn't want to remain on bad terms with me over something so trivial and that she would welcome a second chance to make things right. I didn't need her phony excuses, so I instructed her to stop talking and go away. Since I wouldn't be letting them live with me, I understand why she felt the need to act like a happy family. She wouldn't have delayed so long to acknowledge her mistake if she genuinely regretted what she had done. She would have apologized throughout their vacation or maybe immediately following that phone call. My dad probably doesn't regret anything either, but he decided to appear nostalgic when he knew I wouldn't forgive them. He accused me of being cold-hearted for not allowing them to live with me. He wanted to live in this house because it made him think of my mother, but he said he was willing to split all the expenses if I allowed him to return. He claimed that since he only wanted to feel closer to my mother, it would be self-centered of me to throw them out in this way without considering the consequences. He even attempted to justify Julia's actions by saying that she had simply had a rough day and that nothing she said was intended. He went on to say that his girls wanted to return and start anew because they missed me. However, I refused to accept any of that. Since the divorce, I'd known my dad had his eye on this house, and after seeing this side of Julia, I didn't want to take any chances. I told him that since I wasn't going to change my decision, they couldn't return. Suddenly, my father broke down in tears over the phone. He said that because I refused to let him reside in the home where he had the greatest days of his life, I was the most self-centered daughter ever. He claimed that I was being petty and harsh because of a minor argument with Julia and the fact that they hadn't invited me on their honeymoon, which wasn't even the primary point of contention. My mother would despise this ugly side of me, he said. After his wife mistreated me and they didn't even invite me to go on their honeymoon, am I the bad one for not letting my dad and his new family move back in with me? First update. My initial post didn't receive the kind of response I had anticipated. I get what everyone was trying to say, but I don't believe some of you needed to be so nasty about it. Since my dad doesn't deserve it, I stayed true to my resolve and didn't allow him to move back in. I don't need any more rudeness in my life, and that's all he's been so far. At first, he and Julia were both quite sweet to me, so it was lovely while it lasted. But my dad's true colors came out when I told him that I still needed time to ponder. Unfortunately, I'm not that weak. They probably ran out of patience and believed they could intimidate me into having them live with me. Being by myself is preferable to hanging out with the wrong people. His reaction when he discovered that the house deed had been moved to me rather than to him should have been enough to make me realize how materialistic and self-centered people can be when it comes to these things, therefore I shouldn't have allowed them here at all. Regarding Julia, I'm relieved that she decided to pointlessly argue with me and ultimately caused significant harm to herself. We all could have been a happy family, or at least I suppose we could have been, had she not spoken that. However, I will never fall for their deceptive tactics again, so that will never occur. All of my grandparents had already died, I was alone, and I missed my mother. I needed a family to be there for me, but these folks are obviously not capable of doing that. Fortunately, I discovered it before it was too late. Since they left a few days ago, my dad has been phoning me frequently and texting me because I don't pick up his calls. They don't deserve it, but he feels that I should at least give them one final chance to make amends. They squandered their one and only opportunity, and I have no doubt that they will do the same if I offer them another. It doesn't make sense to take that chance because it will impact me more than anyone else. Although I regret how I treated my dad, there isn't much I can do in this circumstance. He never bothered to put forth much effort with me, and you get what you sow. He never did anything for me, therefore he has no right to be upset when he understands that I won't base my decisions in life on him and his emotions. Second update. It seems like my dad is really desperate to move and not just insists on it. Can you guess why? He was fired a few months before his wedding and has been living off his savings ever since because he didn't take the vacation he claimed to have taken. Even though he had a sizable amount of funds, he eventually told Julia that they couldn't afford to return to Houston to try their luck after an elaborate wedding and honeymoon. He was unable to cover the rent, and Julia was unable to assist either because she had quit her job to become a housewife after meeting my dad. My dad expected that I would allow them to live with me, but now they needed to find a place here. Julia didn't even bother to apologize because she didn't know about any of this until he told her the truth. I was correct when I said that she lacked genuine regret for her actions. Even though she is completely fake, my dad deserves a woman like her. He got in touch with me once more today and asked if I could allow them to move in for a few days until he could find a good job that would pay enough to continue. However, I informed him that I would not do so. I didn't need that type of negativity about me, and they had been nasty. He's an adult. He ought to have realized that a luxurious wedding and honeymoon would be inappropriate if he didn't have a job. I can appreciate the desire to flaunt one's money, but only for those who can truly afford it, not for men who have 2 teenage stepdaughters and a housewife. I'm not to blame for his decision to disregard his obligations, even if he was fully aware of them. I'm not going to feel bad about prioritizing myself. Since I am no longer responsible for any of this, they may handle things on their own. I tried to be a little more courteous than I am here because I didn't want to come off as making fun of him or anything. I contacted him and stated the same things I mentioned here. Nevertheless, he chose to see it as a parody of the situation and informed me that I would be held accountable for my actions toward him. I didn't reply since I'm not sure how to react to that. He will now find a way to blame me for it and make it my responsibility, regardless of what I say. Therefore, it is preferable to be quiet and let him suffer. I scarcely care about it anymore. Third update. Today, my dad made the decision to leave the city. However, why would he depart without informing me of my shortcomings as a daughter? He could have gone in silence, but he and his wife are who they are. They decided to turn it into a big show. I haven't spoken to him in almost 3 weeks. After that, we didn't talk again, and he didn't even try to get in touch with me. However, he and Julia texted me today to tell me that they were overjoyed to tell me that Julia's ex-boyfriend had agreed to pay for their return journey and would even allow them to stay with him. He apparently had an epiphany that he needed to see his daughters as well. Although her ex-husband paid child support and Julia had full custody of her girls, he was never quite able to find time for them. After waiting long enough for my dad and Julia to resolve their differences amicably, he offered to clean up his own mess after realizing they were of no service. I guess this is fantastic for his daughters. At least some fathers do take charge, even if it's too late. I recognize that this might have been the only answer, but they didn't tell me all of this up front. A few hours earlier, they shared a photo of their girls along with a comment that included a 4-leaf clover sticker and a fortunate clover. I'm intelligent enough to deduce the possible true reason for Julia's ex's unexpected realization and the reason he's paying for their return trip. I'm not entirely sure why he would pay for all of their airline tickets, but I believe Julia's deceit and obstinacy may have played a role. I've witnessed it firsthand before, therefore I'm positive she exhibits such behavior. I'm glad they're going because this is the last time I'll see them. I'm not sure what actually happened. After reading some of the stories people posted about their wacky families, I also recognized how fortunate I was. My dad knows I won't think twice about calling the police, so you can be sure he's a little too concerned about his reputation to try to harm me in any manner. There's no need for me to worry because I've had enough training to know how to defend myself. I have even less reason to think about them now that they're going. For me, I suppose, hooray. I still get a little lonely sometimes, but I now talk to my friends instead of moping about it since I believe that's a healthier course of action in these kinds of circumstances. After my mother died, I totally shut myself off from the world, and it wasn't until I read these remarks that I realized how lonely I had become. I will attempt to live my life to the fullest now, even though it will take some time. In contrast to many individuals my age, I have a steady job, a respectable salary, and a home of my own. I'm really appreciative of my mother for it. What more could a person want, really, than wonderful friends who genuinely care about me? I'll simply return here if I get into difficulties again, and I have no doubt that the amazing individuals who read this will assist me again. Update 4. My father called me out of the blue today. He had been attempting to contact me via calls, messages, and social media, but I didn't want to speak with him, so it wasn't shocking. I finally responded because I wanted him to stop pestering me and because I wanted to know why he was so persistent. We hadn't spoken for a few months, so I knew this would be, to put it mildly, fascinating. When he informed me that Julia had chosen to reconcile with her ex, the same person who paid for their return trip, my amazement at hearing his voice after all this time changed to incredulity. She apparently chose to return to her former relationship after things with my father didn't work out as planned. My father was distraught and shocked. He requested an opportunity to make amends and mend our friendship, and he appeared sincere in his apologies for everything that had transpired. However, I couldn't help but feel uninterested after everything that had transpired. His and Julia's actions had caused me too much worry and suffering, and I no longer wanted to allow them back into my life. I expressed my regret to him, but I had already made up my mind and had no plans to change it. I remained steadfast in my stance, despite the desperate tone in his speech. I couldn't ignore the anguish they had given me, after all. My father has been attempting to reach me ever since, but I have blocked his calls and messages. I understand that it could be challenging for him, but I must put my own mental health and well-being first. That's it for now. I've always been the black sheep, overshadowed by my golden sister. They demanded I give my house to her and even tried breaking in when I refused. I, 45F, work for one of the top IT corporations in Silicon Valley as a senior software engineer. I'm still trembling as I write this because of what just transpired with my family, but I need to tell my tale and get some outside viewpoint. My sister Rachel, 38F, was the golden child in my family, and I have always been the odd one out. Rachel was everything I wasn't, with her flawless blonde hair and endearing nature. I was the reserved one who liked to play with my chemistry rather than interacting with others. My parents never really made an effort to conceal their choice, and the difference between us was obvious from the start. I believe it's critical to recognize the pattern, therefore allow me to take you back to my early years. I won my first school science competition when I was 8 years old. With orbital patterns included, I produced a functional model of the solar system. My teacher called my parents directly because she was so amazed. They should be proud, wouldn't they? False. Rachel had a dance recital, so they were unable to attend the award ceremony. Mom said, "But honey, Rachel needs us there. She gets nervous without us watching," as she arranged Rachel's hair. The pattern was established early on. Rachel's activities, no matter how insignificant, always took precedence over my accomplishments. I can still clearly recall my 10th birthday. For weeks I had been hinting that I wanted a microscope. I ended up looking like a cupcake in a pretty pink frock instead. "But Mom, I hate dresses," I objected. She simply smiled and replied, "Nonsense. You'll look just like Rachel," which was a complete miss. The gap only grew further during middle and high school. While I lost myself in literature and experimental experiments, Rachel soared through school thanks to her charm and good features. Because, at least she's trying, her C+ grades were praised, but my consecutive A's were anticipated and barely noticed. When I reflect back on the science fair incident from my senior year, it still hurts. I had been refining my sustainable biofuels project for months. It was the state science fair, not just a school competition, so I was shocked to hear, "First place goes to Carla," when the winners were announced. I tried to express my joy during supper that night, but Mom interrupted me in the middle of my sentence. She murmured absently, "That's nice, dear." And then she turned to Rachel. Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper when he said, "Princess, have you decided on your prom dress yet? We need to start looking soon." Rachel's participation ribbons from dancing recitals were on display in the living room, while the trophy I had received sat collecting dust on a shelf. I think the event with the college admission letter was when I finally realized that nothing I did would ever be good enough for them. I was thrilled to receive my acceptance letter and full scholarship to a top tech university. I waved the note as I dashed into the living room. "Mom, Dad. I got in, full ride and everything." Mom's eyes lifted from her magazine. "That's nice, dear. Rachel, didn't you say you needed help picking out your prom dress?" And my moment of triumph was suddenly dismissed once more. My first taste of independence came in college, and it changed my life. All of a sudden, people recognized and even loved my love of technology. I pushed myself into computer science with a zest that even shocked me. I was flourishing in my new setting while Rachel struggled through community college, more interested in parties than schoolwork. Rachel would complain, "College is so hard," when we occasionally spoke on the phone. "I don't know how you do it, Carla." I resisted the temptation to suggest that she may find it easier if she studied more and partied less. I simply shifted the topic and muttered some ambiguous encouragement instead. Rachel revealed to me during my sophomore year that she was engaged to her high school boyfriend David, 42 million. As you might assume, their wedding was perfect. Yes, the same guy who previously asked me if science was like really hard and stuff. I stood there in a pink nightmare of a bridesmaid dress, forcing a smile for the pictures. Rachel was glowing, and David looked awkward in his tuxedo. During the reception, Mom whispered to me, "Isn't this perfect? This is what every mother dreams of for her daughter." I was hesitant to ask if she had ever dreamed of anything for me. After all, it was Rachel's day. As I focused on developing my IT job, Rachel's life appeared to be a straight-out script from our parents' fantasies. She revealed her first pregnancy within a year after getting married. 9 months later, Sophie, 8F came, and 2 years later, Nathan, 6M. In the meantime, I was advancing professionally. I worked numerous weekends and late nights as a junior developer at a tiny business in the beginning. I was one of the few workers retained when the company was bought out by a big tech corporation. From middle management to senior engineer, team lead, and finally senior software architect, I climbed my way up the corporate ladder. My family had the same reaction to every advancement and accomplishment. "That's nice, dear. Did we tell you Sophie got the lead in her school play?" Or just, "How lovely. Did you hear Nathan made the T-ball team?" As Rachel and David bought new automobiles and went on lavish vacations, I lived frugally, saving every bonus and stock option. Last year, I was ecstatic to finally find my dream home, a stunning 4-bedroom house in a fantastic neighborhood. It had finally paid off after 20 years of hard labor. During our subsequent phone conversation, I declared, "Mom, Dad, I bought a house." The person on the other end of the line paused. "A house?" Mom said slowly again. "All by yourself?" "Yes, all by myself," I replied, my enthusiasm somewhat waning. "It's a great investment and—" Mom stepped in and said, "But it's such a big house for one person. What will you do with all that space?" "I'll enjoy it, Mom, it's mine." "Well," she responded, clearly disapproving in her tone. "I suppose if that's what you want." "Oh, did I tell you Sophie lost her first tooth yesterday?" After I bought a house, the months that followed were hectic with work and getting settled. I immersed myself into the decor, making every space a representation of who I am. In order to focus on personal projects, I made the main bedroom my haven, the second bedroom my home office, the third my library, and the fourth my home laboratory. However, I began to observe a change in the dynamics of my family during this period. My parents stopped calling as often as they used to. There was a strange tension in their voices when they called. Then Mom called last week. Mom said, "Carla, dear," in a sickly sweet voice. "We're having a family dinner next Sunday. You'll be there, won't you? We need to talk about something important." "We need to talk" frequently indicates that trouble is about to break out in my family. Nevertheless, nothing could have prepared me for that dinner's events. David kept cleaning his throat anxiously while Rachel's children ran about screaming. "Carla," Dad remarked, clearing his throat after dinner, "we need to talk about your house." My hackles stood up. "What about my house?" "Well, you see, sweetie," he added, both of them looking at Mom. "We've been thinking, that big house of yours, it's really too much for just one person. Dad, we've been over this. I like my house, it's mine." Mom jumped right in. "What your father is trying to say is that Rachel and her family need more space. The kids are growing, and their apartment is getting cramped." Rachel's sudden interest in her plate caught my attention. I asked, but I had a dreadful suspicion that I already knew where this was going. "And we think," Mom said in a condescending tone, "that since you're childless and single, you ought to give your house to Rachel and her family." My expectation was that someone would shout, "Gotcha," and let me know it was all a prank. But all I saw were faces full of anticipation. "You can't be serious," I said at last. "Now, Carla," Mom replied condescendingly. "Don't be selfish. Rachel needs the space more than you do." "Selfish?" I asked again, raising my voice. "How is it selfish to want to keep the house I worked hard for and paid for myself?" Dad added, "It's your sisterly duty to help in times of need." I looked at Rachel. "And what do you have to say about this?" She eventually looked into my eyes and shrugged. "Well, it would be nice to have more space for the kids. And it's not like you're using all those rooms anyway." What I was hearing was unbelievable. As if I were the irrational one for not giving up my house, my own family was pleading with me to do so. "No," I firmly responded as I got to my feet. "Absolutely not. I'm not giving up my house." I heard Dad say, "Think about it, Carla. Family should come first," as I picked up my coat and made my way to the door. The repercussions. It has been a nightmare in the days since that terrible family supper. First, I ignored my parents and Rachel's incessant calls and messages. Then the flying monkeys struck. People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had strong opinions about my home and the decisions I had made in life. It was Aunt Beatrice who called first. "Your poor sister needs a home for her children, and you're living all alone in that big house. Shame on you." She interrupted me when I attempted to clarify that it was my home, purchased with my own funds. In my day, family helped family. We didn't hoard our resources like misers. The real kicker came next. "Well, if you're not going to use all that space, you should at least consider donating your eggs. It's not like you're using them anyway." I almost dropped the phone because I was so stunned. I was about to reply when she continued primly, "You're not getting any younger, you know." Tick-tock. Edna, my great-aunt, left a voicemail. "Carla, dear, it's not too late to find a nice man and settle down. Then you'd need that big house. Your sister has a family. What do you need 4 bedrooms for? Your work?" Uncle Robert texted. A series of increasingly audacious messages continued to arrive. Every relative appeared to have a different take on my life decisions and how I ought to manage my possessions. To prevent getting more texts when I get home, I've started staying late at work. My phone is always buzzing with guilt trips and new judgments. Even though I've blocked a number of them, they continue to originate from fresh ones. But something feels different tonight. Call it paranoia or intuition, But I can't shake the uneasy sense that my family might try something out of the ordinary. Especially concerning was Rachel's final message. You'll see reason eventually, one way or another. Reddit, I need your advice. Am I being selfish, really? Should I risk being totally shunned by my family by standing my ground, or should I just give in to keep the peace? Above all, should I be concerned about Rachel's most recent message? First update. Since I first posted about my family attempting to coerce me into selling my house, 2 weeks have gone by. I am utterly disturbed by what transpired yesterday morning, and I must share this amazing news. I've spent the last few days working from home due to a severe cold. Nothing major, just enough to satisfy my boss's demand that I take a break. I was on a video conference with my team at around 10 in the morning when I heard a sound that chilled me to the bone, someone attempting to open my front door. I initially believed I was dreaming, but then I heard the familiar jingle of keys and recognizable murmurs. After muting my phone and sneaking over to the front window, I was astounded by what I saw. My parents, Rachel, and David were on my porch, and there was a moving truck parked in my driveway. I caught them red-handed as I threw open the door. When they helped me move in last year, Mom was actually holding a set of keys. They must have made copies. Carla, Mom exclaimed, almost dropping the keys in the process. We thought you'd be at work. I couldn't help but ask incredulously, so you decided to break into my house? Rachel moved forward with righteous wrath, but at least Dad had the grace to appear ashamed. You're being completely unreasonable about this, Carla. We thought if we just took the initiative. More details that infuriated me were revealed at that point. Furniture had already filled half of the moving truck. Actually, they were going to move Rachel's family in while I was ostensibly at work. Rachel added, we were just going to wait for you to come home. As though that would help. I yelled, no, you weren't, and pointed to the truck. You were planning to move in behind my back while I was gone. At that moment, I saw movement on the other side of the roadway. Mrs. Johnson, my neighbor, had her phone in her hand and was observing from her window. She mouthed, police, after catching my attention. I gave a grateful nod. I said, I've called the police, in a trembling but forceful voice. You wouldn't, sneered my dad. Your own family? The siren sounded as if at the exact moment. When a police car arrived, my family's faces lost their color. 2 policemen came to observe the scene. One questioned, suspiciously glancing at the moving vehicle. Is there a problem here? Yes, officer, I responded, attempting to maintain a calm tone. These people were attempting to break into my home. Carla, exclaimed my mom. How could you? My family was examined by the officers. Is this true? The officer held up a hand as my father began to stutter forth an explanation. It was both exciting and upsetting what happened next. Sir, trying to enter a property without the owner's permission is a serious offense. I'm going to need to see some ID from everyone. The officers took pictures of the moving vehicle, recorded the duplicate keys, and obtained statements. They clarified that although they would not make any arrests this time, they would record the incident and charge anyone who tried to make an arrest again. Rachel glanced around as they were being led off my land. You'll regret this, Carla. You'll end up old and alone. I sat down on my couch, trembling, after everyone had gone. However, the day was far from done. An hour or so later, I got a call from a surprising person. Aunt Margaret, Maggie, my mother's sister. Carla, she gently began. I heard what happened. There's something you need to know about why they're really after your house. I was astonished by what she told me. She apparently works at the bank where my family conducts business, and she has observed some quite alarming trends. In addition to living over their means with fancy automobiles and lavish holidays, Rachel and David are heavily indebted due to David's severe gambling addiction. For years, he has been surreptitiously depleting their accounts. However, things worsen. A few years ago, my parents lost a lot of money in a pyramid scheme. They were going to move in with Rachel and David after they purchased my house, but they've been barely making ends meet. Maggie clarified, I confronted your mother about it? That's why she stopped talking to me last year. I've been watching this train wreck happen in slow motion, and I couldn't stay quiet any longer. I can now see why their desire to acquire my house was so intense. All of them are in danger of going bankrupt. Not only did they desire my house, but they also required it as a source of income. The remainder of the day has been devoted to installing security cameras, changing my locks, and taking notes on everything. Just in case, I'm also considering obtaining a restraining order. In order to have hard proof of everything, Aunt Maggie has recommended that we engage a private investigator. She believes that there may be more to this narrative than what we now understand. Living in a horrible soap drama is how I feel. How did this become my life? Once we have additional information from the investigator, I'll provide another update. I feel secure in my home for the time being, but I can't help but wonder what other secrets my family may be keeping. I appreciate all of your help and guidance. I was even more in need of those security cameras than I had initially believed. Second update. I'm in complete awe of our private investigator Diana's findings. I had underestimated the depth of this rabbit hole. Yesterday, Diana met with Aunt Maggie and me at a peaceful cafe that is not close to the places my family usually visits. The attempted home invasion appeared to be only the beginning of what she disclosed. David has been living two separate lives. Diana not only verified his addiction to gambling, but she also discovered a 2-year-long affair with my cousin Jenny. While Rachel and my parents were struggling financially, he was spending money on weekend vacations, upscale hotels, and pricey presents. Diana replied, "Look at these credit card statements," which included frequent expenses at the Grand Hotel, Tiffany's jewelry purchases, and weekend getaways to Las Vegas. They were all from the same places and matched Jenny's social media posts. This is where it becomes even more twisted though. The funds David spent on his extravagant affair? My parents contributed a large amount. For what they believed to be a business investment, they had been lending him money. He was using it to finance his second life instead. Diana also discovered proof that David opened a different Cayman Islands bank account. By pretending it was for a high-yield investment opportunity, he has been embezzling money from my parents' retirement account. Actually, he has been using it to keep up his affair with Jenny and pay off his gambling losses. Diana stated, "Your parents' retirement account has been nearly drained," as she passed over another paperwork. They've been living on credit cards, believing David's promises that a big return on investment is just around the corner. Diana's discovery of emails between David and Jenny about their scheme to use my property as collateral for a loan in order to hide their tracks before Rachel found out was the most startling revelation. Diana clarified, "They intended to obtain a second mortgage on your home. The paperwork was already being prepared, they just needed to get physical possession of the property first. That's why they attempted the break-in. They weren't just trying to move Rachel and the kids in. They were racing against time to secure the house before their whole financial house of cards collapsed." Aunt Maggie, who had been studying the papers in silence, interrupted. "There's more," she added in a strained voice. "Look at these transfer dates. They align perfectly with your Uncle Bob's business's supposed expansion dates." I was slammed by the implication like a truck. Jenny's father, Uncle Bob, had been unwittingly using his business loans to David to finance his daughter's romance. I've made the decision to call a family gathering. My parents, Rachel, David, Uncle Bob, Aunt Clara, Jenny, and all the other family members who have been bugging me about my house will be present. They are coming to my house, the house they attempted to steal, at 2 p.m. tomorrow. I will present all of this evidence, with bank statements, hotel receipts, pictures, and email correspondence. Diana has put together a thorough presentation of her research. Aunt Maggie will be present to verify the bank account information. To make sure that things don't go out of control, I've even recruited security. You need to be prepared, Diana cautioned me. When cornered, people like this tend to lash out. They might try to blame you for investigating or accuse you of destroying the family. I'm tired of being the family doormat, even though I know she's right. Everything is different tomorrow. I feel bad for bringing this to everyone's attention, especially Uncle Bob and Rachel. Both of them are also sufferers of this. However, I can't find it in my heart to be nice about this after years of being treated like a second-class family member and being forced to give up my house to cover for their falsehoods. The security cameras have been set up. The evidence is arranged. My family will discover tomorrow that the quiet, dependable sister they have been taking for granted has finally had enough. After the meeting, I'll provide another update. I have a feeling it will be explosive. I'm currently here in my home office, going over these records, and trying to comprehend how the family that made me feel self-centered for keeping my house was actually going to use it to hide their own network of deceit and lies. After the heated family gathering, the dust has finally settled, but my life has taken a totally unexpected turn. I want to explain how everything transpired and the current situation. The altercation proceeded as Diana had anticipated. The room exploded when I showed them the proof of David's financial schemes and affair with Jenny. The security personnel had to restrain Uncle Bob after he lunged at David. Jenny attempted to leave the room, but Aunt Maggie barred the door, and Rachel broke down in tears. The best part was when I showed my ace card, which was recordings of David and Jenny talking about how they were going to use my house as collateral for loans. My parents' faces became pale when they recognized the full scope of their alleged investment opportunity. In the aftermath, I made a firm move. I started by informing the ethics committee of David's business about his financial malfeasance. He was put on administrative leave pending investigation within 24 hours. He was fired at the conclusion of the week for breaking company finance regulations. Additionally, his professional licenses were revoked. I then assisted Uncle Bob in starting legal action to recoup his business loans using Diana's proof. David had misrepresented the entire investment strategy, according to the damning paperwork. Although the matter was resolved out of court, David's remaining possessions were taken away. My parents had to come to terms with themselves. After I reported the questionable activity, the bank opened an investigation into their accounts. All 5 of them now jammed into a tiny rented apartment, just as they had intended to do in my house, after being forced to sell their home to pay off their debts. After learning of David's complete betrayal, Rachel filed for divorce. She attempted to apologize to me, saying she was unaware of his plans for my property, but considering that she actively participated in the attempted break-in, I don't think it's credible. In all of this, my connection with Alex, 50 million, whom I met at my neighborhood rock climbing gym, has been the most surprising development. He travels the world taking pictures of endangered species for half of his time as a wildlife photographer. In contrast to my family, he recognized and appreciated my independence and job right away. We developed a relationship organically and without coercion. We support one another's goals while enjoying our independence, and he has a prosperous career and home of his own. He put up his photography gear in my home lab last week, joking that the lighting was ideal for both my circuit board documenting and his wildlife photos. I now consider Aunt Maggie to be my real family. Every week, we get together for supper and talk about everything from her crazy childhood memories to investing techniques. She shocked me last month when she disclosed that she had changed her will to name me as her heir. She responded to my protest by saying, "You're the daughter I never had, Carla, the one who truly understands the value of hard work and integrity." Most of the remainder of the family has split up into different camps. It seems that Jenny and David made an effort to keep dating, but as soon as the money stopped coming in, their romance ended. She has relocated to a different location, and he has accepted a position at a Nevada used car dealership, which is very different from his previous executive one. Rachel and my parents still make an effort to get in touch with me on occasion, mainly when they need money. I've blocked their phone numbers and told my attorney to take care of any correspondence. Their most recent attempt was especially pitiful. Rachel left a crying message stating that she and the children were going to be evicted. Aunt Maggie then informed me that they had more than enough money for rent. They were merely attempting to mislead me emotionally once more. My career has seen the most satisfying transformation. I've been able to give my career my whole attention without the continual drain of family conflict. My firm just promoted me to Chief Technology Officer, something I might not have accomplished if I were still subjected to their emotional manipulation and incessant demands. I now consider my house to be my home. The area they once attempted to take has been transformed into a sanctuary by me. Modern equipment has been added to the home lab, and one of the bedrooms has been converted into a library and photography studio where Alex and I work on our individual projects. Originally put for protection, the security cameras now primarily record wildlife in my garden. In order to record the family of foxes that have taken up residence beneath my deck, Alex has even installed a few specialist cameras. The fact that my house, which my relatives said was too big for one person, is now more loving and purposeful than they could have ever dreamed is a lovely irony. I've discovered that family is about respect, understanding, and support for one another rather than blood ties or duties. I've learned what true family looks like from Aunt Maggie, Alex, and my close friends. They love me for who I am rather than what they believe I should be. They support my decisions rather than criticize them, and they celebrate my accomplishments rather than downplaying them. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who helped me along the way. I was able to resist being abused by my biological family because to your counsel and support. And to anyone experiencing similar familial pressure, keep in mind that despite expectations from family, you have the right to defend what you've fought so hard to achieve. Despite what some people may think, my narrative isn't about retaliation. It's about establishing a life full of true love and respect and at last escaping poisonous family relationships. There are instances when the family you chose is superior to the one you were born into. I recognize the irony that my family lost everything in the end when they attempted to steal my house, but I gained a real family and a level of happiness I never imagined was possible. My niece moved in after her parents kicked her out and tried imposing rules in my house, so I taught her a tough lesson. Kesha is 14 years old and female. She is my husband's sister's daughter. She's become increasingly defiant, to the point where her own parents have kicked her out. She has been suspended from school twice this year and is on her way to being expelled. She was suspended twice for starting fights with other girls. She has a fiery temper for an 8th grader. Of course, her parents were outraged when she was sent home from school. But when they sat her down to discuss it, she ended up hitting her mother. Her father dragged her away and kicked her out. He informed her that she was not welcome to stay there until she got her act together, and that was the end of it. I believe Kesha spent the night at a friend's house before arriving on our doorstep the next day. My husband and I both work from home, so we were present when she arrived. We were initially perplexed because we had heard nothing about her suspension or the altercation with her parents. But, of course, we allowed her in, because she is family. She explained that the day before, her parents had kicked her out for no apparent reason. She said her mother had become physical with her and she was afraid, so she came to us. Even as she said all of this, we were doubtful. We knew Kesha had been on a cruel streak recently, so my husband snuck away to contact his sister and get the whole story. Of course, his sister gave him the entire truth. She claimed it broke their hearts to do it, but they didn't feel secure having her in the house anymore, so they kicked her out. My brother-in-law went on to say that he was tired of allowing her get away with her behavior. If she was going to learn, she needed to do it the hard way. My spouse has always had a sweet place for his niece. He couldn't help but invite her to stay with us temporarily. We don't have any children yet, so we have plenty of room for her to stay. I was concerned about the concept because I had no prior experience with children, let alone aggressive ones. But I decided that it was better for her to stay with us rather than with a random acquaintance until things between her and her parents calmed down. The first night went good. She was on her best behavior, and we had a lovely supper together. My husband and I had hoped her entire stay with us would be like this. We believed she could just need a pause to think things through, and that this would be beneficial to her. Unfortunately, the peace did not endure very long. We awoke the next day and resumed our normal activities. We took baths, played music in the kitchen while preparing breakfast, and arrived at our home office by 8 a.m. To begin our day. Kesha didn't leave the guest room until around 11:30. We heard her moving around in the kitchen and went out to see if she wanted to join us for lunch. We could tell just by looking at her that this was not the case. As we went into the room, she appeared tough and gave us a death stare. I asked her how she slept, and she sarcastically replied, "Like crap." My husband raged at her, telling her she couldn't talk to me like that. She lashed back, stating she could be in a better mood if I wasn't so loud in the mornings. Apparently, she heard me singing in the shower and claimed I woke her up. She asked if we could keep it quiet in the mornings from now on. We were stunned. I'd never had a guest speak to me like this before, especially a child. She then retreated to her room for several hours. We needed to get back to work, but we were both concerned about how the remainder of the day would unfold. Around 7 p.m., Kesha emerged from her room. I had saved her a plate for dinner, so we figured she would come out and eat. Instead, she threw a piece of paper down on the counter and began walking towards the front door. My husband asked where she was going, and she answered, "Out with friends." He warned her she couldn't go out alone right now, especially at night, with no idea where she was going or who she'd be with. I intervened and asked her what the piece of paper she had laid down was about. The list was handwritten. I grabbed it up and read it aloud. Kesha's house rules. No music or singing before noon. No disgusting food for dinner, also known as veggies. No boring television shows. Avoid asking foolish questions. Please do not enter my room. My husband laughed at the list, but Kesha's expression was dead serious. She truly expected us to obey her crazy regulations in our own home. I had had enough with this bullshit. I went to the door, grabbed my coat and keys, and instructed her to get into my car. She was perplexed, but my tone made it clear that I was not joking. She left for the car, and I assured my husband we'd be back in a minute. We traveled in quiet for around 15 minutes. I was furious, and I could tell she was too. After a while, Kesha realized she didn't know this part of town. She hesitated before asking where we were headed. I informed her that if she didn't want to stay with her parents or with us, I'd show her where she would end up. We were approaching downtown, and the look on Kesha's face told me she had never been to this section of town before. Every street corner was crowded with homeless people, all of whom appeared dirty and high. There were tents and trash everywhere. When we came to a stoplight, people approached the windows and began banging, asking for money. Some of them were outraged, and one man even kicked the car as we drove away. I could see Kesha was afraid, but neither of us said anything. Then I pulled into a parking area and turned off the car, ensuring the doors were locked. We had parked in front of a homeless shelter. People lined up outside the entrance, hoping to acquire a hot supper, blankets, or, if they were lucky, a roof over their heads for the night. Some of the guys were yelling and arguing with one another, but the majority of the women simply looked sorrowful. It was dreadful, and even I was afraid to be there. Finally, Kesha asked if we could leave. I informed her that if she wanted to come back to our house, she had to follow the rules. I also informed her that if she wanted to stay with us, she needed to call her mother and apologize, as her parents simply wanted the best for her. She nodded, and I knew I had communicated effectively. I don't believe anyone in her life had ever put her in her place like that. But, I believe, at that moment, a part of her knew it was precisely what she needed. When we came home, my spouse seemed anxious. Of course, he was intrigued about where I had taken her and what we had discussed, but I gave him a look that indicated I would tell him later. We all went into the kitchen, and I took out the plate of leftovers we had set aside for Kesha earlier. I heated it for her, and we sat down at the table together. My husband and I were startled that Kesha spoke out first. She inquired about what we both did for work. My husband was taken aback, but pleased to respond. After that, we talked about our careers, local colleges, and various extracurricular activities she may participate in. It was actually a wonderful evening. I may have been tough with her earlier, but I believe I got through to her. Now I only hope it sticks and she may return to her parents' place soon. Let's see what happens after she apologizes to her mother. The day after we visited the homeless shelter, Kesha called her mother. She asked if I would sit with her while they talked, and I of course agreed. She truly made an outstanding apology to her mother. By the end, she was in tears but smiling since her mother had accepted her apologies and invited her home. She startled me by asking if she could stay with us for a little longer. Her mother consented, so we decided she could stay with us until the following Monday, when she had to return to school. We may have had a bumpy start, but I believe this was the finest possible outcome. It's been a couple months since Kesha visited us. Since then, her conduct seemed to have changed completely. She has not received any further school suspensions, detentions, or calls to the office. Her grades have greatly improved, and she even auditioned and was accepted into her school dance squad. Her parents say she hasn't been hanging out with the same pals, and her attitude at home has significantly improved. Overall, I would say her stay at our house was a success for her. I'm extremely proud of her and excited to see what her future holds. God bless you. Thank you for identifying her as a child in need of instruction. You'd be an amazing mother. Great job, Auntie. I hope her parents are half as supportive as you are. My partner is upset with his parents about this, but some of his siblings and parents believe I was the jerk. So, here we are. I'm a 29-year-old female professional boxer who is probably in my final year or two of competitive competition. My guy, a 35-year-old man, is very supportive of my career and a true gem. We live on the opposite coast from his family, and he has had a strained relationship with his father for years, so I have never met them. His parents, on the other hand, have been working hard to make things right over the previous year. When he indicated that we will be in a nearby city for one of my matches, they wanted to have a family supper. I was genuinely pretty excited about it. I don't have a family, and his family is large, so I've always wondered what it was like. We tried to schedule dinner before the match because I always look a mess for a couple of days after a competition, but they had a conflict. So we scheduled it for a few days before flying abroad to give me some healing time. I wasn't seriously injured, but face bruises and cuts are impossible to hide. My partner had already informed his parents about what to expect, but I don't think they took it seriously. When we arrive, his mother is visibly uncomfortable, while his father simply stares at me. Some of his siblings and their families were present, and I was swamped by the nieces and nephews, who all had a million questions. That's where I could have made a mistake. I informed them about boxing and showed them a video of a portion of my battle on my phone to help them understand why I appeared to be injured. I told them that I was all right. It clearly impressed a couple of the nieces, as they spent the entire supper asking me questions and being amazed that girls could accomplish things like that. His father often attempted to redirect the conversation, which irritated him. He then remarked that it was excellent that I was thinking about retiring and starting a real life soon, indicating that I would have enough time to put together a household and have a family with my boyfriend. I told him that at most, I might become a trainer, and that I already had the life I want. His mother commented that it was a shame I was bruising up my nice face. I joked that this was my winner face, and that she should have seen the other woman. Except for the children and one of his sisters, the entire situation seemed strange and uncomfortable. When we arrived home, my boyfriend checked his texts and then called and raged at his parents. I later learned that his mother had told him that I was extremely improper and a negative influence on the children. One of his brothers inquired whether he was going to bring Barbarian Barbie back for Christmas because his children were so excited. However, his cool sister informed him that their daughter had already asked when Aunt OP will return. It's actually caused a big problem between my boyfriend and his parents, And I'm thinking if I should have simply kept the boxing stuff to myself. However, Barbarian Barbie sounds like a fantastic name to me. NTA. Your boyfriend warned the family, but he still decided to move the meal from before to after your disagreement. You have nothing to be ashamed about. I feel horrible for some of those kids though. Having such narrow-minded, oppressive parents and grandparents must be awful. You informed his parents about the natural repercussions of your career. They had plenty of time to discuss it with their children beforehand if they wanted to. Assuming you are correct and they did not take your warning seriously, they still had the option to explain it in a kid-friendly manner throughout the dinner. In the lack of explicit guidance from them, you acted in a natural and reasonable manner. You provided a short and comprehensive explanation of your apparent injuries, including video evidence of where they came from. I'll confess that I was startled and impressed by how you articulated your explanation. Then I realized that, like any other career, you'd undoubtedly had plenty of practice answering basic questions about it. So I'm no longer surprised, but I'm still really impressed. NTA. The amusing part is that the family is completely overreacting. While it's fantastic that girls can be boxers, most girls, and boys, don't want to be. This means that, like many other things that children are enthused about, their enthusiasm for this will decrease. I am a 40-year-old woman, and my cousin, a 36-year-old man, married his 35-year-old wife 5 years ago. During that time, she has been a welcome addition to our family. She's an academic who works as an assistant professor in a major metropolis in the neighboring state. Although she does not commute to university every day, she works from home the majority of the time. My husband, a 42-year-old man, and I paid them an unannounced visit a while back and were surprised to see how disorganized their home was. It wasn't too bad, although the floors should have been vacuumed and there were filthy dishes in the sink. My cousin's wife performs the majority of the cleaning, but since she started her new work, she has had less time for it because she is constantly grading or teaching. My cousin doesn't do much cleaning because his father is quite traditional about gender roles and did not raise him to help his wife clean the house. My cousin's wife has done an excellent job of teaching him to do more around the house, but it has been a lengthy process. When my cousin's wife celebrated her birthday recently, my sister, 45, and I decided to buy her a Roomba to help her keep the house tidy. My cousin had personally apologized to me during my previous visit for the house not being as clean as it should have been, so my sister and I decided that the Roomba would be good for her. Apparently it wasn't. She was angered by the idea that she was a lousy housekeeper and that cleaning was completely her burden, rather than asking our cousin to help her more often. What bothered me the most was that my cousin's wife gave the Roomba to Goodwill. If she didn't want the gift, she could have returned it to me, allowing my sister and I to receive our money back. I don't believe I'm T since she could use some aid. But now my cousin informs me that his wife is still furious and would not attend family events. The holidays are approaching, and if she does not appear, everyone will wonder where she is. My cousin is upset because he will be caught in the middle and obliged to explain her absence politely. Oh, YTA, big time. First and foremost, with seasonal changes, stressful work, and life in general, things must occasionally be put on hold in order to accommodate higher priorities. You paid an impromptu visit and were surprised to find her unprepared for visitors. I might understand anxiety if the house had mounds of items everywhere, making it impossible to move and posing a health risk, but dishes in the sink and unvacuumed, unswept floors are nothing. That's just a normal daily mess. Your cousin's wife also mentioned that she works from home. What do you believe this means? Do you suppose she's just sitting about twiddling her thumbs, waiting for something to do while getting paid? Second, you say your cousin's father taught him traditional gender norms, yet it appears that your parents did the same. Along with questioning why you're so critical, you should also consider what you've internalized and why you believe cleaning should be left to the woman in the home. This is a bizarre case of cognitive dissonance. Finally, I'm grateful she donated it. You deserve to lose money for perpetuating gender stereotypes and claiming that your cousin's wife isn't doing enough. You have no control over what someone does with anything you've gifted them. Honestly, I'm voting for YTA. You went to her house and complained about the degree of housekeeping to her spouse, whom you openly confess does nothing to help around the house, but not about her spouse. She works a tough job while still doing the majority of the housework that her spouse does not do enough of. Yet you believe it is appropriate to give her a vacuum cleaner as a birthday present because her spouse is too manly to help around the house adequately? Why not give it to him on his birthday, as he is the one who is lacking? Also, her husband is an AEH. Why the hell did he explain the present to her in that manner? It was rude. A spa gift card would have been a more appropriate gift for her. She works hard, but is unable to complete all of her responsibilities. Your relative refuses to help with the housekeeping because he believes that traditional gender norms are the norm. Perhaps you should have bought your relative a vacuum and cleaning supplies instead of his wife. It's really insulting to give her something on her birthday unless she has said to you that she wishes she had a Roomba. The gift was unsuitable. My mother-in-law tried to ruin my marriage by stealing my phone, but her plan failed and her own daughter is suing her. She's absolutely insane. I, 34 female, and my hubby, 37 male, have been married for around 5 years. My mother-in-law was a headache to deal with long before we were engaged. She loathed me from the moment she met me. She has treated me horribly since the beginning, which is absolutely unnecessary. When my husband and I initially started dating, she would make so many comments about how we wouldn't last and how he'd ultimately become bored with me and go on. This continued after 3 years of being together. She refused to give up on the thought that we would soon break up. However, to her dismay, he proposed, and we became engaged. His father, sister, 35 female, and brother, 39 male, were all thrilled for us and have always been quite supportive. However, his mother was extremely salty and made no effort to hide it. She even expressed her disappointment in front of everyone, which was the most ludicrous thing imaginable. By then, I was used to it, so I didn't let it bother me. Thankfully, the rest of my husband's family is quite pleasant and has always made me feel welcome. My husband and his siblings are really close, and he adores them. My husband frequently stands up for them when their mother is too much to handle. My sister-in-law is married, and my mother-in-law also has a difficult relationship with her husband. While that is unfortunate, it is comforting to know that someone else understands what I am going through. My mother-in-law also made wedding planning extremely difficult. She was continually demanding that everything be done her way. She wanted to choose the venue, dress, cuisine, theme, and everything else, which made the situation extremely stressful. It reached to the point where I was considering canceling the wedding because it had become too much. But we made it through, and the wedding went off smoothly. My mother-in-law made a few disparaging remarks about my body, but my mother and sister-in-law yelled at her and escorted her out of the room. Aside from that minor hitch, our wedding went quite well. I hope that once my husband and I married, my mother-in-law would stop complaining about how we wouldn't last and we could start to get along. I was very, terribly wrong. She just couldn't get over the concept that one day my husband would wake up and realize I wasn't good enough for him, and we'd split. She would frequently make comments about how my husband should do better, that he should be with someone who could give him children. I'm infertile. She'd even try to suggest other women he could leave me for. For those who are concerned, my spouse defends me anytime she makes rude remarks. He shuts her down immediately, and if things get too nasty, we leave. He will not contact her until she has apologized to me. While her attitude does not change, my husband stands up for me. He has offered to cut off all communication with her if I wish, but I do not want to be the reason he no longer has a relationship with his mother. So I've always assured him it was okay and unnecessary. Besides, I was already used to her attitude, so it didn't bother me too much. We don't get to see my mother-in-law too much because of her conduct. We only go on exceptional occasions, like holidays or birthdays. I feel awful for my father-in-law, who is a wonderful guy, but we needed to set these boundaries because my mother-in-law is too much to bear. This applies to my sister-in-law and brother-in-law as well. They avoid seeing her as much as possible. However, when we do go, we are usually all together, and it is enjoyable to hang out with them. This past weekend, we all went over to celebrate my father-in-law's birthday. Everyone was present, which was wonderful, and we had a great time. My mother-in-law maintained her typical demeanor, but we did our best to ignore her and concentrate on the birthday man. We didn't want to give her any more attention than was required. We departed after the party, and everything appeared to be all right. Nothing noteworthy happened, or so we thought. Yesterday, I received a call from my brother-in-law, who informed us that my sister-in-law was planning to sue their mother. My husband and I were really perplexed, wondering why she would attempt to sue her own mother seemingly out of nowhere. He then revealed what happened on my father-in-law's birthday. My mother-in-law had stolen my sister-in-law's phone, believing it to be mine. She used it to message many random men for hookups, with the intention of showing my husband and convincing him that I was cheating on him, so he would leave me. However, my mother-in-law did not know she had taken the wrong phone. She had been impersonating my sister-in-law and sending improper messages to random males with her phone number and social media accounts. My sister-in-law discovered out when she went to her parents' house and requested her father to call her phone, believing she had left it there. When they heard it ringing in my mother-in-law's pocketbook, the truth was revealed. My mother-in-law admitted what she had done, and my sister-in-law lost her cool. According to my father-in-law, who subsequently informed my brother-in-law of what had occurred. My sister-in-law began yelling at my mother-in-law. She called her vulgar names and threatened to sue her for identity theft and slander. My mother-in-law is now losing her mind and upset at me because, somehow, I caused all of this. Despite the fact that she took the darn phone in the first place. She has sent numerous voice messages to my husband, referring to me as the Satan in their lives and alleging that it was because of me that she felt obliged to try such behavior. It's ludicrous, and my spouse is really furious with her. I absolutely doubt this is my fault, but what are your thoughts? You always have hilarious responses, and I appreciate everyone who contacted out. I'll have some tea in a few weeks, so get ready. My sister-in-law isn't backing down and plans to sue my mother-in-law. We attempted to persuade her not to attend, but she's adamant and over the wicked witch's antics. My mother-in-law tried to blame me for the entire affair, but my husband promptly shut her down. He has stopped communicating with her and has blocked her in everything. I have also blocked her. She even attempted to call me, but it didn't work. My sister-in-law, brother-in-law, and their partners have also stopped communicating with her. According to what my husband has heard from his father, my mother-in-law is in complete meltdown. She is absolutely perplexed as to how her own children could turn against her in this manner, and she continues to spew rubbish about betrayal and other follies. My sister-in-law is preparing to sue her for theft, slander, and identity theft. She has already engaged a lawyer, and they are in the process of scheduling a court hearing to handle the problem. It's been a stressful few weeks, and I'm proud of my sister-in-law for having the bravery to take her mother to court. My mother-in-law had anticipated this for a long time, so it is quite rewarding. My spouse also intimated that my father-in-law is getting bored of his wife's behavior. He apparently threatened to kick her out of the house again. I feel awful for him because he's such a kind guy, but I'm hopeful for his sake that things will calm down soon. That's all the knowledge I have for now. I'll keep you updated if anything else changes or if new developments occur. A month or two later, I decided it would be a good idea to update everyone who is interested in what is going on. My sister-in-law took my mother-in-law to court. They eventually reached an agreement, and my mother-in-law was required to pay a substantial sum to my sister-in-law for the harm she caused. My sister-in-law also obtained a restraining order against her mother, as she does not want to see her ever again. It's a sad scenario, but I can understand. Anyone would be tired of my mother-in-law's toxic behavior after so many years. My father-in-law has also chosen to file for divorce since he can no longer accept her behavior. When he served her with divorce papers, she lost it entirely. She ripped them up, and when he attempted to leave, she closed the door and forced him to stay. He had to phone the police, who arrived and removed her from the premises. The divorce was finalized almost a month ago. After my father-in-law kicked her out, she decided to see us. When I opened the door, she pushed her way inside, shouting at me. I swear my ears almost bled. I tried to get her to leave, but she refused and screamed at me. She shoved me, knocking me to the ground and hitting my head on our table. Thankfully, it was nothing serious, but I was concerned she would try anything worse. My husband arrived home just in time to force her out and call the cops on her. She was charged with assault for assaulting me, and we got a restraining order against her. All of my mother-in-law's children, including my husband, have stopped communicating with her and refused to have any kind of relationship with her, especially since she forced her way into our home and wounded me. Nobody knows what she's doing now, and I pray she never shows her face again. Things have been tranquil ever since she was forced to leave. We pay more visits to my father-in-law, and our family gets together more frequently, which has been beneficial. My sister-in-law is pregnant, which is very exciting. I can't wait to be an aunt. Honestly, my sister-in-law should sue her mother-in-law. She's so insane, she makes crazy eyes seem normal. Someone should probably get her a padded room at Grippy Sock Jail. I, a 19-year-old female, recently moved into a house that I inherited from my grandfather. I'm majoring in psychology, and my institution is close to the house, so it made sense for me to move in. It's more convenient in general. The house is reasonably spacious, with a great backyard encircled by a tall fence, and the most of the neighbors are kind. However, the woman who lives in the house directly to my right has caused problems. She is quite pious, as is her entire family, and they attend church every Sunday. Now, this is where the story begins. I've been working on lowering my carbon footprint, and because it was a beautiful, sunny, hot summer day, I decided to hang my clothes, including my underwear and bras, on the line in my garden. My neighbor observed and confronted me about it. She shouted something like, "Why are you hanging your dirty underwear out? You should be aware that it is disgusting and terrible. You should feel humiliated. My 6-year-old can see it. Take it down immediately." I answered by informing her that what I do in my backyard is none of her business, and that she should not have looked into my yard in the first place. Since then, whenever I see her, she throws me dirty and disgusting glances. She's also started gossiping about me to our other neighbors, which I know since I overheard her discussing it. The fence is quite tall, so she must have been attempting to see what I was doing in my backyard. Now that I think about it, perhaps I could have used a dryer instead. AITA to dry my underwear and things in the backyard? NTA for drying clothing, including underwear, outside. It has been a standard practice for generations. Many people continue to do it in warm weather. Your neighbor's 6-year-old probably doesn't care about your underwear. This is totally your neighbor's problem. While modesty is valued in some religious communities, your neighbor seems absolutely out of place here. Since the invention of laundry, people have hung their garments to dry. She cannot dictate what you do on your property. If you want to keep the peace and avoid dealing with her, hang a sheet or towels to obscure her view of your underpants. My sister is a mother of 4. Currently, she has Sloan, 14, female, Sheen, 13, male, Riley, 7, male, and Bria, 4, female. Sloan and Sheen share the same father, my sister's late husband Robbie. Robbie died 6 years ago, and my sister and her new husband Shane met 5 years ago. Shane already had Riley when he and my sister met, but Riley lacked a mother figure in his life, so my sister filled that role, and Riley now refers to her as mom. When my sister and Shane initially married, Sloan and Sheen told me that Riley was their mother's son, and that she and Shane referred to him as their brother. Sloan and Sheen, however, did not consider Riley to be their brother. They also admitted that Shane was occasionally referred to as their father, but they did not feel the same way about him. They urged me not to inform their mother because she would be upset and attempt to change their minds. I assured them they could speak with me if they needed to, and I hoped things would improve. They've told me over the years that they didn't sense a sibling link with Riley, and then with Bria when she was born. They also do not consider Shane to be their parent. Despite the fact that kids name him their stepfather, they see him differently than Robbie and my sister do. Sloan revealed the truth a few weeks ago when she created a scrapbook as instructed by her therapist. Sloan and Sheen have been visiting therapists on and off since their father's death. My sister read through the scrapbook and noted that Sloan had not included Riley, Bria, or Shane, but only Robbie, Sheen, and their extended family. She'd also shared details about her best pal. My sister asked Sloan and Sheen about it, and they told her how they felt. Later, she spoke with me. She claimed I didn't look astonished and asked why. I informed her that it had not surprised me. She replied, "You knew?" and questioned why I couldn't tell her. She claimed I was supposed to be her brother and had allowed her to continue believing everything was fine while her children built walls around their hearts. She also admitted that she should have done more to prioritize time spent with the older and younger children. I told her the kids didn't want her to know, and I didn't want them to feel unable to communicate with me. She claimed it wasn't an excuse and that I had failed as an uncle to all 4 of them by allowing this distance to build. AITA? NTA. The distance did not increase, it was always there. Your sister created the divide by attempting to fit the kids into her ideal of a perfect new family. She made them feel compelled to feel the way she wanted them to. You did the right thing by providing a safe environment for the children to confide in, and you should continue to do so. They'll need it. My wife and I married on the Saturday before Halloween and have recently returned from our honeymoon. However, we are still unable to agree on a problem that arose during the ceremony. We had always wanted a Halloween wedding but didn't want to marry on a Monday night for several reasons. If Halloween had fallen on a Saturday, we would have celebrated it. During the wedding, there was a discussion regarding holding the wedding on a real holiday. My mother stated that she would not have attended if it had been on Halloween. Everyone was taken aback and asked her for clarification. She stated, "People who get married on holidays are selfish, and I would never take trick-or-treating away from my sisters when you could have chosen any other day." She also stated that children only have roughly 12 to 14 Halloweens to trick-or-treat, and she would never take it away from them for anyone. My wife and her family were mortified. Honestly, I was not surprised. I knew she felt that way, and she had previously skipped her sister-in-law's wedding since it was on Halloween. My wife told my mother that she was being impolite and asked, "Who speaks that in front of the bride?" She accused my mother of favoritism and said that if our wedding was so unimportant, she simply leave. My mother said, "It isn't Halloween, so it's a non-issue." My wife, who was still unhappy, requested me in private to make my mother go, but I declined. My mother didn't seem to be demeaning her, she was only expressing her viewpoint. I wasn't going to kick my mother out of my wedding for a hypothetical situation. We didn't quarrel throughout our honeymoon, but my wife believes I should have made my mother go. NTA. Your mother was simply sharing her views. She even maintained it wasn't an issue because the wedding wasn't on Halloween. She wasn't playing favorites either. She had already missed her sister-in-law's wedding since it fell on Halloween. I understand her point of view. I wouldn't call individuals who have holiday weddings selfish, but I understand why she wants to preserve Halloween memories for her children. She wasn't trying to persuade you to change your mind about your date, she was simply expressing that she wouldn't have attended if it were Halloween. Your wife overreacted by asking you to kick your mother out of the wedding. That is severe. Your mother wasn't being disrespectful, she was simply being honest. My parents begged me to forgive my brother for betraying me with my ex-wife and then demanded I support them and his new family financially. My wife, Amy, 26 female, cheated on me with my brother, Jake, 26 male. Thus I, a 34-year-old guy, just divorced. My family chose them over me, but karma had other intentions. To help you comprehend how my life culminated in this treachery, let me start at the beginning. Jake, born when I was 8 years old, was always the golden child, whilst I grew up as the forgotten one in suburban Boston. In the eyes of our parents, Robert, 58, and Sarah, 56, I appeared to vanish. They weren't outwardly hostile, but I was clearly viewed as an afterthought. This dynamic became evident as we grew older. I still recall winning my first science fair in 6th grade. I'd spent months developing a working model of solar system dynamics, complete with orbital calculations and revolving planets. I won first prize and received a special citation for mathematical precision. Jake, on the other hand, had a t-ball practice, not a game, therefore my parents were unable to attend the ceremony. Jake's participation ribbons covered the walls of our living room, while my prize sat untouched on the mantel for a week before being hidden in the basement. Our entire youth was influenced by this preference. Jake's C+ grades were applauded, whilst my straight A's were treated with distracted nods. My mother was concerned that Jake would feel guilty about his regular classes because I was in the advanced placement program. Jake got a new automobile for his 16th birthday to help build his confidence, according to his father, whereas I had to start working part-time at 16 to pay for college and buy my own clothes. Graduating high school was another difficult experience. During my valedictorian speech, my parents spent the whole of the ceremony filming 10-year-old Jake playing in the stands since he was bored. They didn't hear me announce my MIT scholarship. What was supposed to be a celebratory dinner for my successes transformed into a party for Jake because he seemed a little down about all of them. Mom even advised me to tone down my enthusiasm for my college aspirations. When I told her I'd been admitted to MIT on a partial scholarship, she said, "That's great, honey, but have you heard Jake might be the starting pitcher next season?" That's when I knew that nothing I accomplished would ever be adequate. I was simply the practice child, the test subject for their actual parenting efforts with Jake. At the age of 18, I headed out for MIT with my scholarship, money saved from 3 part-time jobs, and a resolution never to look back. When I moved into my dorm, Jake had a summer league game. My folks went early without even helping me unpack. College was a life-changing experience. For the first time, I was evaluated solely on my own merits. I realized my interest for software architecture, studied computer science, and graduated with honors. My college thesis on distributed systems optimization drew a lot of attention, and by the time I finished, I had 5 job offers. A part of me hoped that things would improve with my family, so I chose a good company in Boston, partly to stay close to home. Within 2 years, I was leading my own development team, and by the 5th year, I had become the youngest senior developer in the company's history. However, my parents were too consumed with assisting Jake with his 3rd college major change to comprehend or appreciate what I did for a living. 4 years ago, in a modest coffee shop near my employment, my life changed dramatically. That is where I met Amy. She was finishing her teaching degree while working as a barista. Amy had a talent for remembering each regular's order and a particular tidbit about them. She then told me that she had been leaving encouraging messages on my coffee mugs for weeks before I noticed. She eventually consented to go out with me. Our first date lasted 6 hours. We discussed everything, our families, anxieties, and dreams. When I told stories about my upbringing, she said, "They're blind. They have no idea what they're missing." For the first time, I felt understood. The next year seemed like a dream. We prepared extravagant meals together, discovered Boston's hidden bookstores, and went hiking in New Hampshire. Amy encouraged me to pursue a large promotion at work, helped me prepare for interviews, and celebrated my victory more than anybody else. When I proposed to her after 14 months, she sobbed delighted tears and stated she had been waiting for it. At the time, I thought our wedding was little yet lovely. However, when my family came, They spent the whole reception discussing Jake's new job offer in California. My mother even stopped Amy's father's toast to share a text from Jake regarding his second interview. In retrospect, I should have seen it as a red flag, but Amy laughed it off, describing their commitment to Jake as sweet. For 3 years, our marriage was all I had dreamed for. We started talking about starting a family, acquired a lovely condo in Cambridge, and traveled whenever we could. Amy transformed our house into a warm, loving home by adorning it with images from our journeys and establishing a tiny container garden on our balcony. She frequently stated, "It's us against the world." Then, last year, Jake reconnected. After failing to flourish in California because the startup culture wasn't his vibe, he moved back to Boston. He wrote me a lengthy email, indicating his wish to restore our friendship. He remarked, "Families should stick together," and admitted that he missed having an elder brother in his life. After a week of consideration, Amy convinced me to give him a try. "People evolve," she added. "Maybe they've come to terms with their losses." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet Jake for supper. Although the first meeting was unpleasant, it held potential. Jake appeared more self-aware, admitting that he had it easy growing up. He professed a wish to atone for the past. A week later, I introduced Jake to Amy, and they bonded right away. Too well, as I would eventually discover. At first, everything seemed perfect. Jake started popping by for dinner a few times a week. He seemed genuinely interested in my work, brought wine, and delighted us with tales of his adventures in California. He also stood up for me when our parents showed their typical partiality at Sunday dinners. I began to hope that we may finally form a genuine brotherly bond. However, things gradually began to alter. Jake began stopping by our house unannounced, often while I was still at work. Amy, who was frequently grading papers, told me they were simply hanging out and that it was wonderful to have company. He stayed for supper, used my coffee mug, and shared inside jokes with my wife. I ignored the warning signs. There's sudden stillness when I entered the room. Amy's phone turned away when I sat next to her, knowing glances at dinner, and coincidental meetups in the coffee shop or grocery store. The pregnancy was announced shortly thereafter. We were enjoying supper at home, naturally with Jake present, when Amy revealed the news. Although I was overjoyed, Jake's reaction should have shown everything. He was not astonished. Rather, he smiled with a knowing delight that made my stomach turn. Jake was never far away from me after that. He discussed how active he intended to be in our child's life, caressed Amy's stomach without asking, and made comments about the baby's future. Even when I planned a romantic baby moon for Amy and me, Jake ended up inviting himself. He stated, "The baby needs both of us," and Amy agreed. I still recall the night I learned the truth. I lay awake, mentally going over months of dubious happenings. Amy's phone was charging on the nightstand while she slept blissfully next to me. In our 6 years together, I had never looked at her phone. I believed in trust and privacy, but that night, I had to know. What I discovered devastated me. Jake and Amy have exchanged hundreds of messages over the previous 6 months. They discuss secret hotel meetings, future plans, and their baby. Soon after Jake re-entered my life, they began sharing a bed. They planned to notify me after the baby was born, figuring I would be too attached to leave. The pregnancy was not an accident, it was part of their strategy. Message by message, my world crumbled. I sat in the reading chair, holding Amy's phone, and read till daybreak. When Amy awoke and saw the phone in my hand, she knew. She wailed, "We did not intend for this to happen. Jake and I just clicked. He knows me better than you ever could." She even used the most overused phrase in the history of affairs. "We were going to inform you, but we didn't want to bother you after I became pregnant." That morning, I called my parents, expecting that they would finally support me. Their response stunned me. My mother responded, "Jake made a mistake, but he'll be a parent now. You have to forgive him and be the larger person. Think of the baby. Think about the grandchild." They were once again shielding Jake. Certain things never change. That day, I contacted a divorce attorney and went into a hotel. Amy alternated between screaming for my forgiveness and accusing me of deserting our family. At work, Jake tried to corner me, insisting on a man-to-man conversation. I reported him for workplace harassment and had security escort him out. Going through divorce was a nightmare. Amy and Jake claimed that their affair began due to my emotional unavailability, describing me as controlling and emotionally abusive. My parents supported their story, claiming that I had always been difficult and had a lifelong jealousy of Jake. My mother even criticized the mediator, claiming I should have been more sensitive to Jake's demands. Following that, I stopped negotiating. When we went to court, Amy was able to obtain a fair settlement. Apparently, in Massachusetts, Having an affair with your husband's brother does not waive alimony. Small successes, such as retaining the condo and the majority of my salary, seemed hollow in comparison. I am currently 34 years old, divorced, and separated from my family. I changed my email address, blocked their phone numbers, and told building security to never let them in. Some days, I wonder whether I could have prevented everything if I had been a better wife, brother, or son. But, finally, I recognized that I was not the one who betrayed everyone. I was not the one who turned the family against itself. It is commonly stated that everyone ultimately suffers karma. I am not sure whether it is true, but I am weary of being the family's scapegoat. I'm tired of being supposed to be understanding, as others wreck their lives. I've spent my entire life as the one who was overlooked, the second best choice, the afterthought. No more. However, just when I thought things couldn't get much worse, they took another weird turn. Update 1. When I stopped communicating with my family following the divorce, I figured they would finally leave me alone. About a month had passed, and I was focused on recovering and going forward. But it appears that they had different ideas. Yesterday morning, while I was in an important meeting with my development team, our office receptionist notified me that my mother, Sarah, was in the lobby. She insisted on seeing me and allegedly spent over an hour telling anyone who would listen that she just needed to talk to her son. My crew, having watched Jake's previous workplace harassment episode, could tell I was concerned. I ignored her and went on with my work, but soon my phone started buzzing with calls from unknown numbers. It turns out that my mother had asked various family members to contact me. I eventually answered one phone, assuming it was work-related. It was my Aunt Linda, 54, female, who I hadn't spoken to in years. Without saying a greeting, she began, "Your brother and Amy are really struggling. Jake still hasn't found work, and the settlement funds are running out." She added that Jake's affair with Amy became public knowledge and went throughout his professional network, so no one wanted to hire him. Background checks uncovered the issue, prompting several prospective employers to withdraw their offers. I couldn't help but note the irony. For once, Jake's actions had real consequences. This is where it gets absurd. In addition to buying groceries and paying rent, my parents have been financing Amy's pregnancy medical bills. My father's retirement assets are exhausted, and they are now in a panic as their money runs out. What is their solution? They want me to provide financial support to the woman who deceived me and the brother who destroyed my marriage. My mother did not simply show up at my office, she had a plan. Knowing I wouldn't return their calls, she decided to ambush me at work. After threatening to stay until closing time, she delivered a rehearsed speech about forgiveness and family responsibilities. When I finally went down to the lobby to deal with the problem, she conveniently forgot that I had paid for my own college education, stating, "Your father and I have always provided for both our sons. It's time for you to step up and support your brother during this difficult moment." What I was hearing was incredible. Was this a rough patch? My wife got pregnant after having an affair with my brother, who then tried to claim the child as his own. That wasn't a difficult stretch, it was a deliberate set of decisions. When I mentioned this to my mother, she responded, "Well, if you had paid more attention to Amy's needs." I interrupted her, told her to go, and proclaimed in the lobby that I was leaving my brother and his unborn kid behind. While many of my co-workers considered this circumstance humiliating, I wasn't bothered. That evening, Jake sent me an email with instructions on how to bypass my blocks. Using a new account, he issued half-hearted apologies and thinly veiled appeals for financial aid. He wrote about Amy's pregnancy difficulties, which I was unaware of, and claimed they couldn't afford adequate medical care. He also mentioned that the tension was hurting their unborn kid. The email included a sonogram photograph, which immediately piqued my interest. Their manipulative tactics were clear, as they used the baby's emotions to guilt me. The next day, my father arrived at my apartment building, claiming he merely wanted to talk. When the front desk called to alert me, I refused to let him in. For 2 hours, he stood in the lobby, telling anybody who would listen that his successful son was bringing his brother's family pain. Since then, I've had to notify building management of the problem and request that any family members not enter. While it is difficult to address intimate problems in public, I do not see any other option. The harassment has also spread on social media. Amy has been posting vague accusations on Facebook, claiming she was abandoned during her pregnancy by her emotionally unavailable husband. Jake has joined in, adding remarks about how some people need to step up and take responsibility. He's even reposted Amy's accusations, apparently oblivious to the irony of lecturing about responsibility while begging for handouts. It's upsetting how they twisted the story. They paint me as the evil guy because I refuse to support those who mislead me. They appear to assume I have a responsibility to help them from their mess just because I am successful professionally. I've started keeping track of everything, including emails, workplace issues, and social media posts. According to my lawyer, this documentation may be critical if they do anything legal. She is particularly concerned that they will try to use the legal system to get more support. What is the worst part? I've been getting messages from family, friends, and distant relatives telling me to put family first and be the bigger person. They don't seem to grasp that Jake and Amy destroyed what little family I had left. Even though I'm determined not to assist them, the constant pestering is wearing me down. To cope, I've been seeing a therapist and considered relocating to a different location for a fresh start. Despite my hatred for the concept of fleeing, I am fighting to find calm. My own family has gone to a depth I never imagined. They're not just appealing for aid. They're attempting to intimidate and pressure me into donating money to the people who destroyed my life. I have a gut feeling that this isn't over. Desperate people do desperate things, and they are becoming increasingly desperate by the day. Update 2. Suddenly, my former partner's counsel notified me that Jake and Amy were attempting to sue me for further assistance, citing increased medical needs and changed circumstances. My lawyer, who had meticulously documented their harassment, was outraged but prepared. Last week was the scheduled court date. Entering the courtroom felt strange. Amy was dressed to highlight her pregnancy, our parents sat right behind them with smug looks, and Jake wore our father's old suit. Their lawyer started with an outlandish narrative that nearly made me chuckle. They claimed that the emotional cost of the divorce had been undervalued, and that the initial settlement was inadequate. They claimed my pattern of workplace harassment had stopped Jake from obtaining work and even suggested that my alleged vindictive behavior was harming Amy's pregnancy, necessitating specialized treatment due to high-risk issues. My attorney's reaction was heartbreaking. She began by showing surveillance tape from my office building that captured my mother's theatrical antics, Jake's violent behavior, and Amy's attempts to sneak in through the back door. She then presented social media evidence, specifically a full timeline of their internet abuse campaign. The genuine revelation came from their bank documents. Jake had turned down several employment offers, dismissing them as beneath him, demonstrating that he was not struggling as a result of my actions. Amy had declined a full-time teaching position to protect her jobless pregnant woman status. The most incriminating evidence was Amy's prenatal records, which proved she was having a perfectly healthy pregnancy with routine expenses. They had used their unborn child as a pawn to acquire sympathy and money. The judge was genuinely angry. When their lawyer attempted to argue that their mental distress required extra assistance, the judge stopped, saying, "Your clients appear to have committed perjury, counselor. Do you really want to follow this line of reasoning?" Following a brief break, their lawyer returned with a gloomy demeanor. Jake was pale, Amy was crying, and their united front had utterly collapsed. I was pleasantly surprised by the judge's ruling. In addition to denying their motion, the judge decreased my alimony payments by 60%. Parties who misuse the legal system are not viewed favorably by this court, stated Mr. Justice. Mr. Smith appears to have fallen victim to a well-planned operation to exploit him financially and emotionally. The fallout was fast. Amy decided she could go back to work, while Jake suddenly obtained a retail job. In their final message, my parents blamed me for sabotaging Jake's last chance and promised me that they would never forgive me for abandoning my family. Their attorney quit from representing them, citing irreconcilable differences in truthfulness. My workplace tightened security and prevented them from entering the premises. I later found that my parents had taken out a second mortgage to cover their legal fees, and Jake and Amy were regularly battling about money, according to mutual friends. I finally feel like I can breathe. With decreased expenses, I'm building up my money and exploring a job offer in Seattle. Allowing people to confront the consequences of their conduct is typically the most effective form of retaliation. However, I can't remove the sensation that this story isn't finished. Update 3. I'd want to start by thanking the community. Your support and insights have helped me stay strong throughout this ordeal. This may be the final update to my story. Aunt Linda, my father's sister, unexpectedly contacted me many weeks after the court decision. I was interested in hearing her perspective because she had never been involved in a family conflict. This turned out to be a mistake. Trying to seem worried, she started, "Your father isn't getting any younger. His health is suffering as a result of all this stress." She went on to explain how my parents were on the verge of losing their retirement money and had refinanced their property to cover Jake and Amy's bills. "Families should stick together no matter what," she told me. When I didn't respond with sympathy, she swiftly shifted tactics. "Did you know that your mother sobs herself to sleep each night? Even if they behaved poorly when you were a youngster, they are your parents. Jake is still your brother, despite everything that has transpired. Finally, I cut her off. What specifically are you referring to? Jake spent months sleeping with my wife. Getting her pregnant and then claiming the child for his own? Is that what you meant? Her reaction astonished me. Well, perhaps you could have been more involved in your marriage, she stated. She went on to blame their affair on me, stating that my alleged childhood jealousy of Jake produced a toxic environment that drove them together. It was so absurd that I laughed, really laughed. Yet another family member was attempting to coerce me into accepting responsibility for Jake and Amy's actions. This time, however, it did not work. I was not moved at all. Linda, I inquired, why don't you help them if you are so concerned about their finances? Your husband's legal firm is prospering, and you have 3 rental homes. Why am I the only one required to support them? She sputtered, unable to respond properly, and stated, that's different. You have a special obligation as Jake's brother. When I questioned Linda why she hadn't intervened earlier but was now selecting sides, I replied, you decided to come to me and demand that I pay for their consequences rather than admit the harm they caused. She then delivered what she thought was her trump card. Your father is considering early retirement due to stress. The home may need to be sold. Is it your desire to see your loved ones lose everything because you are too proud to help? I responded, no, Linda. They are losing everything as a result of their decision to support Jake's conduct. Once again, they, like Jake and Amy, are paying the price for their own actions. And, guess what? I am not responsible for resolving that. When you're older and alone, family is all we have in the end, she said, threatening to make me regret my decision. No, I responded. Self-respect is all we have in the end, and I'm finally choosing to keep mine. With that, I hung up and blocked her number. However, the talk provided an unexpected benefit. Clarity. For the first time, I felt completely liberated from the obligations and guilt that had haunted me since infancy. Later that day, I accepted a job offer in Seattle. The relocation feels like the appropriate decision, and the company is offering me a significant boost. I am starting again and selling the condominium. My coworkers organized a farewell celebration for me yesterday. During the most difficult months of my life, these people demonstrated what genuine support looks like. My close colleague sent me a card signed by everyone with the following message. Your value is not defined by those who cannot see it. I've understood that family is based on mutual support, respect, and trust, not blood. Friends who stood by me, coworkers who protected me, and eventually myself, have become my genuine family. I am done. To my parents, Jake, Amy, and now Linda, your choices led you to this point, and you are accountable for the consequences. I am no longer available as your ATM or scapegoat. As for me, I'm looking forward to my new life in Seattle. I'm excited about the potential available at my company's renowned West Coast location. More importantly, I can't wait to live a life in which I am valued for who I am rather than compared to someone else's golden child. Writing this final piece from an empty condo, surrounded by stacked boxes, seems weirdly appropriate. Tomorrow, I'll start my drive west. I will reflect on my old life, with all of its misery and familiar turmoil, but I will continue to go forward. Yes, their baby was born last week, in case you were wondering. No, I have not contacted anyone or seen any photos. That chapter of my life is over. I'd like to thank this community again for their support during this trip. Your encouragement and suggestions helped me overcome my self-doubt. For anyone in a similar circumstance, keep in mind that your worth is more than how your family treats you. Walking away may be the most self-loving thing you do. It is time to go. Here's to new beginnings. I found my husband and sister having an affair in the kitchen I paid to renovate, with her making excuses like our mother once did for her actions. I can't move. If I move, it becomes real and I have to accept what I saw and think of what's next. I came home from work early and saw my sister's car thinking maybe she was dropping off some food from her job. But no, I walk in and see my husband and sister naked in my kitchen. The kitchen I paid for. As soon as I registered what I saw, I got into my car and left. I kept driving, just driving until I found the hotel I'm at now. I don't want to believe it. I don't know what to do. My sister, my only family, and my best friend, the one who's supposed to be there for me and support me. My husband, my person, my other half, the one who's supposed to love and respect me. The two most important people in my life have ruined everything. I've blocked them both on my phone. I don't want to hear any of the bullshit excuses they'll come up with. I don't want to confront this. I want to go back to this morning when everything was fine. Comments. Comment 1. Unblock them and just let their calls go to voicemail. Turn the ringer off for each of them in your contacts. That way you can get recorded proof of their apologies and excuses via voicemail. You may need that type of proof for your divorce. Comment 2. Just from a banking standpoint, I work at a bank. File legal documents intending to separate, open an individual bank account, start your paychecks going there after you've filed your separation papers. I don't know what state you are in, whether it's a community property state or not, but keep everything as clear-cut as possible so there won't be issues down the road. Deal with them with your head held as high as possible, don't take their shit, and cry when no one is watching. In front of them, be the badass that you are. They are the lowest of the low and they will prey on your perceived weaknesses. Best of luck OP Edit. I am not a lawyer and I cannot give legal advice. Comment 3, je suis si désolé OP, je ne peux pas imaginer la douleur et la colère que vous devez ressentir reine, j'espère que vous avez un moyen de sortir de ce mariage en toute sécurité, fuyez et ne regardez pas en arrière. Fuck 'em, fuck both of them. Comment 4, the my only family part is what hit me hard. I'm so sorry OP. Yeah, we cut contact with our abusive parents 7 years ago. Thought we were supposed to have each other's backs, always update, 3 days later. Sorry for not replying to comments and not updating, things have been hectic. I didn't think I needed to explicitly say this, but by naked I meant they were butt naked and fucking in the kitchen. I admit mentioning that I paid for the kitchen was odd, and kinda funny. But anyone that knows me knows that the kitchen is my pride and joy, so yes, when I saw my sister and husband fucking in my kitchen it stuck with me. And yes, they did see me. When I got to the hotel I cried for a few hours and then I just wanted to tell someone, anyone. The 2 people I would talk to when something happened in my life were the 2 I needed to talk about, and it was 11-something in the evening, so I wasn't going to disrupt my friends' evenings and burden them. So instead I came to Reddit thinking not many would see it. The response I received was overwhelming. I want to say thank you to everyone that sent me kind words and advice. Thank you so much for all the virtual hugs. I know I only commented once, it's because I had so much to think about and do. I appreciate all the love and support. There was so much amazing advice given in the comments, although a lot of it was American-based I still appreciate it. But one thing I did see a lot was to unblock them and keep the texts and calls as evidence, so I did do that. After posting and another good cry I knew that I had to get my shit together. I didn't have my sister or any family to help, so I had to do it myself. I started researching what my next steps were. In the morning, my friend called me saying my sister contacted her wondering if I had been in contact with her. I told her what happened and she very kindly offered her spare room and her day off work to help me sort stuff out. I called in sick at my job and my friend helped get things done. I got in contact with my friend who works at a bank and she helped me start sorting my finances. My friend also found me a lawyer to consult with. After my phone consultation with the lawyer, I was so overwhelmed. I now know why so many women don't divorce their cheating husbands. It's such a lengthy, expensive, and emotionally draining process. I, fortunately, make a stable income and can support myself, and we, fortunately, don't have kids. I have to remember that things aren't going to happen in one day. It will all take time. As for the house, unfortunately, his parents did buy it for us, and to be honest, after what I saw, I don't want it. I will try to get reimbursed for my beloved kitchen, otherwise, it can burn for all I care. This has been super draining, but I knew I had to talk to them. I already knew there was no coming back for my husband, and when I checked his messages they were exactly what I thought they would say. I'm sorry. It's not what it looks like. We didn't mean for it to happen. Please come home. I love you. Blah, blah, blah. Just absolute bullshit. A small part of me thought maybe I could find it in me to forgive my sister as we only have each other. But after I opened her messages all hope was lost. She used the same excuses we heard our father use when he cheated on our mother and beat us. She said the same things our mother would say when she would excuse our dad's behavior and also beat us. I spoke to her this morning and asked her to tell me straight up who, what, where, when, and why. She told me back in July when I went on a girls' trip she was at our house and joked to my husband that I would cheat on him on the girls' trip because that's what always happens. He said nah, and they joked about it, but she said he could get even with me and they ended up doing it once. One time led to 2 to 3, then to whenever they could do it. There was never any evidence or signs or anything that I was going to or even thinking of cheating. I told her we were done and there is nothing she could do to bring us back together. I later received a call from an unknown number. It was my mother, who I haven't spoken to in 7 years. Turns out my sister has been in contact with her and told her what had happened, and my POS mother, the same woman who beat me for breathing wrong, had the audacity to say this is what I get for taking her daughters away from her. It hurts so much. I know things are going to get messier and this is going to be a long few years. I've now lost all my blood relations. I need to get all my shit and find a new place. I want to show them that I can and I will thrive without them. Again, thank you all from the bottom of my heart for all the love and advice. All the people in the comments that could relate to me, I'm so sorry. Comments. Comment 1. I'm very proud of you for taking charge and standing up for yourself. I know it's very hard, but you got this. You will get through this. Thank you for your kind words. It's pretty hard losing the only family I had, but I'm trying so hard to stay optimistic. Betrayal like this is fucking devastating. It will be long and hard and draining, but I will make it. Comment 2. Foutrele. Family is more than blood. You happen to have some amazing friends, keep them. You can do it and you will make it through this. Comment 3. Hold your head high and cut all of them out of your life. Do his parents actually own the house or did they just give money? Cut off mother and sister for good. Your sister had a piece of work. They gave my ex-husband the money for the house. So it's under his name. And yes, my sister can join my mother and do whatever. They're no longer related to me. Comment 4. Out of curiosity, have you asked his parents if they knew what was going on? This will give them the opportunity to hear what actually happened rather than the lies he'll tell to cover his bad behavior. As soon as I started receiving messages from his mother, I knew he had been feeding them a false narrative. She's been calling me names for bringing my cheating backside and my slutty sister into his life. She never liked me because of my background and thought I should forgive my mother. Unfortunately, all I'll hear from them is the bullshit he's told them. Update 2. 10 months later. I actually forgot about this account until recently, and when I logged back in I saw so many people still commenting, messaging me and checking up on me. To those people, thank you for your kindness. Since so many still ask for an update and I've already shared such a big part of my life, I may as well give a small update. Back in October, my life was in chaos, but I was determined to soldier through it and show them that I can make it without them and succeed. I had to meet with my ex to talk about the house and he kinda gave up and we decided to sell the house. I was reimbursed for my beloved kitchen. At first, my sister would show up at my job and my friend's house, but once I told her that I would get the police involved, she stopped. I haven't seen her since February. I did hear from my pathetic excuse of a mother again, but that was also shut down and I have not heard from her since the end of last year. I'm from New Zealand, so my ex and I have to be living separately for 2 years before we can divorce. Although I want nothing to do with him, I'm not too fussed. 1 year is almost done. I started therapy, which has been healing. I wish I had gone earlier. I have moved into my apartment and I was promoted at work. I have also gone on 2 girl trips and had some extra fun these times as I was a single woman. And I've also just started seeing someone. He has been very kind. Thank you all again for your kindness. Hope this is the update you were waiting for. Comments. Comment 1. I'm glad you updated. You're happier. Never introduced the man to the family. Wouldn't put it past your sister to repeat her behavior. Cutting the toxic people in your life brings so much mental freedom. Living a happy single life after divorce is a kindness to yourself. Best update so far. Comment 2. From what it sounds like, she's gone no contact with all of her family, sister included, the former because of the abuse and the latter because of the reason for this post. I saved my dad's company, making it a $150 million empire, while my playboy brother was still favored. He humiliated me and took the CEO role, firing me. This story is titled "My Deadbeat Brother Spent Years Partying While I Turned Dad's Failing Company into a $150 million empire. He fired and humiliated me during the shareholders meeting. I left quietly. Hello everyone. Before we begin, a small favor. If you love this type of work, please subscribe. It's free, helps the channel, and ensures you never miss out on great videos. Okay, let's get started. Hey Reddit, have you ever had one of those moments when you feel like everything in your life is hanging by a thread? That was where I was 10 years ago, staring at a mess I hadn't made but couldn't ignore. Let me backtrack a little. My father created this corporation from nothing. He was good at what he did, but what about money? Not very much. By the time I was 26, just out of business school, the company was losing money. My father looked 10 years older than he was, buried in tension. And what about my older brother Adam? He was not helping. Adam was 31 at the time. While I was working hard to understand supply networks and financial models, he was, let's just say, having a good time. He possessed an effortless charm that made him the favorite. Always have, always will. I knew that. It wasn't new, but it still stings. One night, I found my father sitting in his office, surrounded by mountains of unpaid invoices and contracts that were never going to be fulfilled. He didn't even notice me walking in. His desk looked like a catastrophe zone, and he didn't appear to have slept for weeks. When he finally recognized me, he remarked, I believe it is over, son. I'm not sure how to fix this. That hit me more than I expected. I'm not sure if it was the weight of his words or the reality that everything he had worked for could crumble, but something inside me clicked. I promised him I will handle it. I'm not sure whether he believed me at the time, but he didn't argue. Honestly, I believe he was relieved that someone was stepping up. Since then, I have almost lived at the office. I understood every detail about how the corporation operated, or, more precisely, how it did not function. I became acquainted with the numbers, renegotiated contracts, and spoke with every client that passed through the door. Many of them did not want to hear from me. I was young and inexperienced, and they had already lost faith in us. I cannot tell you how many times I was told no or had doors shut in my face. But I kept showing up. People noticed that, you know? Even those who didn't like me initially began to take me seriously after a time. The first year was grueling. I was working at least 16 hours a day. My father was still officially in charge, but he delegated the majority of the decision-making authority. I drastically reduced unneeded spending. This includes some of Adam's more extravagant expenses. He had this habit of charging personal expenses to the company account, and no one ever stopped him. I halted it. He did not take it well. I recall him showing up at the office one day just to laugh at me. "Look at you playing CEO," he said. "Don't become too comfy. Dad will not let you take it." I ignored him as always. I knew how the game worked. Adam was the favorite. He was always given credit for things he didn't do, as well as the benefit of the doubt when he made mistakes. But I was not doing this for approval. I was doing it because I didn't want to waste my father's hard work. By the end of the year, things began to improve. We weren't prospering yet, but we also weren't drowning. Slowly, we began to rebuild our reputation. Clients returned, staff came to believe that their jobs were safe, and the company was genuinely profitable. It wasn't much, but it was something. However, success does not solve all problems. My father was proud of our development, but in his opinion, Adam could do no wrong. Adam was always proud of me, no matter what I accomplished. Even though Adam was rarely around, my father would discuss his economic acumen over family dinners. While everyone else was talking about vacations, I was calculating numbers and strategizing for expansion. It was not fair, but life rarely is. I decided early on that I didn't need the credit. If Adam chose to accept all of the acclaim, that was acceptable. I had larger aims in mind. My father's praise would have been good, but what mattered to me was creating the firm something to be proud of, something sustainable, something I could look back on and say, yes, I did that. The company underwent a transformation over the years. We began offering new services, created some unique technological solutions, and moved into markets we never imagined possible. Revenue progressively increased, from scraping by to reaching 8 figures, and then crossing into 9. It was weird to see something that was on the verge of collapse transform into an industry leader. I should have felt great, but there was always this underlying tension. Adam wasn't as absent anymore. As the company grew in success, he began to appear more frequently at the workplace, acting as if he were an essential part of the operation. Everyone knew better, but no one said anything, including Dad. Looking back, I believe that was the first hint that something was wrong. Adam disliked the fact that the spotlight was no longer totally focused on him. He'd joke about how I was too serious or needed a life outside of the job, but there was an edge to his remarks, as if he was preparing for something. I had no idea what it was, but I could feel it. Still, I kept my head down and concentrated on my work. I wasn't going to let his anxieties destroy all I'd worked so hard for. Or so I told myself. In actuality, I didn't believe he could cause much damage. I underestimated him. That was my first error. By the time we reached $150 million in revenue, the fractures were beginning to appear. I just hadn't realized how deep they were. I knew something was wrong the moment Dad called the shareholder meeting. It's not like he hadn't gathered us before, but this time felt different. The phrase he used, a significant announcement about the company's future, had a finality to it. I assumed it was about his retirement. After all, he had been talking about taking a step back for years, particularly after the company had steadied. I was not nervous. If anything, I was prepared. I'd been running the company without a title for years, and this meeting seemed like a formality to make it official. I wasn't seeking for a pat on the back, but I assumed this was a logical step. Who else might take over? Adam arrived late, of course. That was vintage Adam. I was already at the boardroom table, reviewing my notes for the presentation I'd prepared, when he walked in as if nothing mattered. He was always smiling, shaking hands, and cracking jokes. Everyone adored him. That's the issue with Adam. You almost forgot he'd never done anything to deserve the respect he received. He had a knack of making people feel like he belonged, even if he didn't. He threw me a wink as he sat down, which made my stomach turn. Not because I was afraid, Adam had never posed a genuine threat, but because it appeared premeditated. I brushed it off. It makes no sense to let my thoughts go wild before the conference even begins. Dad entered a few minutes later, looking exhausted but resolute. He began his normal spiel about the company's history, how important it was to him, and how proud he was of what we had accomplished. It was a little over the top, but that was Dad's style. He loved to set the tone before breaking the big news. When he finally came to the point, he stood up, fixed his glasses, and said, "It's time for me to pass the torch." He hesitated, gazing around the room, as if expecting for applause or something. After much consideration, I've decided that Adam will be the new CEO. I swear time paused for a second. My brain refused to process what I had just heard. Is Adam the CEO? Surely, this was a mistake. I looked at Adam and he was beaming from ear to ear, not surprised, not taken off guard, just grinning. That's when it struck me. He had known. He had known all along. I didn't have time to think about it because Dad continued going. "I believe Adam embodies the leadership qualities this company needs to move forward," he told me. Leadership qualities? The guy who was often late for meetings? The individual whose only contribution to the organization was depleting the entertainment fund for years? Before I could say anything, Adam stood up, clutching a folder. "I'd like to take a moment to address something important," he continued, his tone formal, which was amusing coming from him. He opened the folder and began flicking through the pages, making a huge out of it. "Over the past few months," he continued, "I've come across some troubling discrepancies in the way certain decisions have been made." He looked at me and then at the board members, as if he was trying to judge their reactions. "It appears that my brother has been operating outside his authority." I couldn't believe what I heard. He went on to accuse me of conducting unapproved deals, exceeding my authority, and compromising the company's name. He portrayed me as a reckless, power-hungry character who had ran amok while Dad was distracted. It was all very cleverly worded, just vague enough to sound reasonable without providing any actual evidence. I opened my lips to defend myself, but Dad interrupted me. "Let him finish," he responded, his tone calm but forceful. Adam concluded his brief presentation by saying, "I only bring this up because I care deeply about the company's future, and I want to ensure we maintain the highest level of integrity." Integrity, coming from Adam? The irony was almost too much to bear. When he was finished, the room fell silence. All eyes were on Dad, who took a big breath and announced, "After reviewing the situation, I've decided to terminate Marcus's employment, effective immediately." And my world came crumbling down. Security guards emerged out of nowhere, standing by the entrance, seemingly waiting for the signal to haul me out. I did not fight it. I did not even say anything. What was there to say? The decision had been decided long before the meeting, and I had fallen right into their trap. As I was gathering my belongings, Adam leaned over and muttered, just loud enough for me to hear, "Nothing personal, little brother. Just business." That was when I realized it wasn't all about the corporation. This was about him demonstrating something to me, Dad, and anybody who had ever compared us. He wasn't concerned about the company's future, he was concerned about taking it from me. I walked out of that boardroom with all the decorum I could summon, but inside I was seething. Not only was I caught off guard, but Adam had used years of hard effort against me. He had not only taken the job, but also the narrative. By the time I arrived to my car, my phone was already flooded with texts from coworkers, friends, and even a few board members who were taken aback by what had occurred. I disregarded them all. I needed to think. The drive home was a haze. I continued repeating the encounter in my thoughts, trying to figure out why I had missed the signs. Looking back, they were all there. Adam coming up at the workplace more frequently, Dad being abnormally secretive, and even some of the board members behaving distant recently. I'd been so preoccupied with operating the company that I hadn't noticed the storm developing right under my nose. When I arrived home, I sat in the dark for hours, trying to make sense of everything. How could Dad, the guy who had seen me devote my life to this enterprise, chose Adam? Was it loyalty? Blind favoritism? Or was I just so replaceable in his eyes? Whatever the cause, one thing was certain. I was out and Adam was in. But here's the thing about Adam. He's terrific at portraying the character, but he's lousy at recognizing the stakes. While he was busy celebrating his victory, he didn't realize I wasn't leaving empty-handed. Far from it. I had spent years establishing more than simply a business, I had created leverage. And while they were busy scheming my ruin, they didn't bother to investigate how deep my roots were. That night, I reached a choice. I was not going to fight Adam directly. That's what he expected and wanted, a chance to portray me as bitter and spiteful. No, I planned to do something much smarter. I was going to wait. And when the time came, I was going to remind them all of who started this empire in the first place. The first thing I did was contact a few important employees who had been with the company through thick and thin. These were not spectacular, high-profile individuals. Rather, they served as the company's backbone. The IT staff, a few senior developers, and 2 managers who had worked with me during those difficult early years. I knew they'd answer my phone because, unlike Adam, I'd taken the effort to establish relationships. I didn't tell them everything, I didn't have to. All I said was that there was a lot going on behind the scenes, and if they trusted me, they should wait a few days before making any major choices. Nobody asked questions or hesitated. That was all I needed to know about their loyalty. Next, I focused on the infrastructure. The advantage of rebuilding a company from the ground up is that you know where every piece fits. Over time, I surreptitiously established a separate business to manage our most precious assets, including intellectual property, customer contracts, and proprietary software. On paper, it was simply a support firm designed to streamline operations. In truth, it was the center of the business, and I owned it entirely. Why hadn't I informed anyone about it? Because I knew something like this was going to happen eventually. Maybe not exactly this, but I had a feeling Adam would try to play some form of power play. What about Dad? Let's just say I gave up expecting him to have my back a long time ago. With everything in place, I spent the remainder of the weekend getting receipts, metaphorically speaking. I sifted through years of documents, emails, contracts, and bank records, gathering evidence of Adam's neglect, mismanagement, and blatant dodgy activity. Some of it was minor issues, such as excessive expenditure and missed deadlines. Other issues were more serious. Side dealings with competitors, questionable transactions, and moves that jeopardized the company's future. By Sunday night, I had a folder thick enough to stop a bullet. But that wasn't the endgame. My intention was not to completely ruin Adam, that would have been too simple, and it would have accomplished nothing. My goal was to remind everyone, Adam, Dad, and the board, why I was the one who had originally turned the firm around. On Monday morning, I awoke earlier than usual. Not because I had anywhere to go, but because I wanted to witness the aftermath in real time. I brewed coffee, put up my laptop in my home office, and connected to the company's internal network. Yes, I still had access. You'd think a guy like Adam, with all his leadership abilities, would have thought to withdraw my credentials right away. But no. The first thing I did was activate the failsafe I had programmed into the system years ago. There were no viruses or other dangerous software involved. It was merely a small script that transferred all internal communications to a secure server under my control. Emails, memos, meeting invitations, it all went through me. Then I focused my attention on Adam's PC. Again, no hacking was necessary. He hadn't even changed his password. It was the same one he'd used since college. I uploaded a video file to his desktop and set it to play automatically when he checked in. What about the video? A highlight reel of his worst decisions, replete with timestamps and accompanying documentation. It wasn't spectacular or too dramatic, it was simply a cold, stark reminder of his inadequacy. By 8:15 a.m., the commotion had started. Adam walked into the office, looking smug as ever, and I observed him through the security feed. He sat down at the CEO's desk, turned on his computer, and leaned back in his chair, as if he owned the place. A second later, the video began playing. At first, he appeared bewildered. Then his face flushed red. He banged the keyboard a few times in an attempt to close the file, but it remained open. Every screen in his office showed the same film in repeat. Meanwhile, the notifications began. Board members, department heads, and major investors' inboxes began to fill up one by one with emails. Each email comprised a piece of evidence I had gathered, along with a brief description of how Adam's actions had harmed the organization. I kept the tone professional, no accusations, just facts. Down in the lobby, federal agents entered. I had informed the authorities about some of Adam's more questionable financial practices, and they were ready to speak with him. What about the cherry on top? An email from the IT department notifying the resignation. They had all signed contracts with my subsidiary and were no longer employed by the corporation. The email concluded with a simple statement. We stand with the person who built this company. I saw Adam try to hold it together. He phoned IT support, but no one answered. He called Dad, but his phone went directly to voicemail. He even tried calling me at one point, but I didn't answer. By mid-morning, the board had called an emergency meeting. Adam was summoned, and from what I saw on the security stream, it was not a friendly conversation. I didn't need to hear what was said in that room to know how things ended. By noon, Adam had been let out of the building. I didn't feel smug or vindicated as I watched the events unfold. If anything, I felt relaxed. This was not about vengeance, it was about balance. Adam had spent years relying on charm and manipulation, but when it came down to it, he couldn't keep it up. What about Dad? Well, he had made his decision? I wasn't sure what would happen next, but one thing was certain, the game had changed. And for the first time in a long time, I had complete control of the situation. The news quickly spread. Employees were muttering by the afternoon about federal authorities arriving, Adam leaving, and the CEO being hauled out of the premises. In the age of immediate communication, this type of turmoil cannot be restrained. By the next morning, rumors had turned into headlines. Company scandal rocks leadership team. There were no names yet, but everyone understood who they were talking about. The stock price plummeted. It wasn't a steady drop, it was a free fall. Investors began withdrawing as soon as they discovered the company's fundamental assets were no longer in its hands. That was intentional, of course. The subsidiary I'd established to house it all had been legally autonomous for years, and it was now the foundation of my new business. Adam inherited a bright, empty shell. Meanwhile, I kept my head down. I wasn't about to show up in the middle of this and look like the man who rubbed salt in the wound. I'd already done enough to disrupt Adam's alleged authority. The following step was not about myself, but about the individuals who truly made the company operate. That morning, I wrote an email to every employee. It was short and to the point. Subject: a new opportunity to the present staff. You have witnessed the happenings of the previous day. Many of you are probably concerned about your future. I want you to know that your efforts and dedication have not gone unappreciated. I'm inviting you to join a new organization where your contributions will be respected, your jobs will be secure, and you'll be working with leaders that value innovation and honesty. Your jobs and benefits will remain unchanged, with more support and possibilities for advancement. If you're interested, you may learn more here. Link. There is no pressure. This is totally your decision. Thank you for what you have done. You deserve better, and I hope I can deliver it. Marcus. By the end of the day, my inbox was swamped with responses. People weren't simply signing on. They were thanking me for giving them an out. It was surreal to hear notes from people who had persevered with the company through its worst days, telling me they believed in me, not the organization that had just collapsed. Over 93% of the employees accepted the offer within hours. Adam, on the other hand, was not doing so well. By midweek, the probe into his financial actions had become public. That's when the true dirt came out. It was discovered that he had been siphoning money via forged vendor contracts. He'd also been collaborating with competitors, selling client information in exchange for under-the-table money. I was aware of some of it, but seeing it all laid out in black and white was overwhelming. The officials acted promptly. Adam was legally charged with fraud, embezzlement, and a variety of other charges. He was released on bail, but his reputation was ruined. The media had a field day, portraying him as the poster child for nepotism gone bad. Every element of his antics, the parties, the reckless spending, and the backroom deals, was brought to light. And then there was Dad. He went radio silent for the first few days, most likely trying to digest what had just transpired. I can only imagine how he felt when he realized that the son he had trusted and favored for decades had turned out to be a massive liability. The board was not spared either. The investors who remained sought answers, and the remaining members scrambled to minimize the damage. But, what could they say? The company's basis has been pulled out from underneath them. Everything that made the business valuable was now integrated into my new operation. That week, I met with the leadership team of my new employer. These were the individuals who had followed me out of the chaos. The IT director, the head of operations, a few important managers, and the core development team. We sat around a conference table in the new office space I had secretly reserved months before. It wasn't spectacular, just an efficient modern setup with plenty of room to expand. The first order of business, I continued, is to ensure that everyone feels stable here. No shocks or gimmicks, we've all gone through enough of that. Everyone nodded around the table. I could see relief on their expressions. For years, they had been caught in the crossfire of poor judgment and partiality. They could now focus on their task without worrying about what Adam would do next. The change was not without its challenges. As expected, there were legal challenges, and a few clients required additional reassurance that this was the appropriate decision. But, altogether, things went more smoothly than I had expected. By the end of the month, we were completely operational, and I could finally breathe a bit easier. Meanwhile, the original corporation continued its decline. With no assets, no leadership, and no clear path forward, it became a cautionary tale in the corporate world. The stock price had been artificially inflated by years of hype and was now worth pennies. Investors left, litigation piled up, and the remaining staff struggled to find new positions. Adam, obviously, attempted to spin the story in his favor. He spoke to a local newspaper, stating he had been set up and that the probe was politically motivated. It did not land. By that point, the evidence against him was overwhelming, and even his father refused to defend him publicly. In this scenario, justice was not about destroying Adam, but about holding him accountable. For far too long, he had left it to others to clean up his messes. This time, there was no one left to save him. When the dust settled, the message was clear. Leadership isn't about titles or favoritism. It's about doing the work, winning trust, and accepting responsibility. Adam had failed at all three, and he was now reaping the consequences. I wasn't out for retribution or gloating. I was determined to create something new, free of the faults of the past. The aftermath had been chaotic, but it was also vital. Sometimes the only way to mend something damaged is to dismantle it and start afresh. A week after Adam's public humiliation, I received the call I was expecting. It wasn't from Adam, but from Dad. He'd been keeping his distance ever since things went wrong, but I knew it was only a matter of time before he reached out. He left a short and direct message on my phone. "We need to talk. Your mother and I are going to see you tomorrow." I did not respond. What was there to say? I understood exactly why he was calling. It wasn't an apology, and it certainly wasn't an admission that he had made a mistake. No, this was about the fallout. The tanking stock price, the litigation, the investors bailing out, and the fact that his entire retirement fund was now invested in a company that was on the verge of failure. The next morning, Dad and Mom arrived at my new company's office on time. I had purposefully kept the place low-key, but I was not trying to hide. They discovered me easy enough. When they walked in, I realized how much they had aged in such a short period of time. Dad looked like he hadn't slept in days, and Mom appeared to have been sobbing a lot. They both sat across from me in the small conference room, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Dad was the first to speak. "Marcus," he said, his voice straining, "you've made your point, but we need to figure out how to fix this." I sat back in my chair and crossed my arms. "What exactly do you want fixed?" I asked. "What a mess Adam made? The company you allowed him to destroy? Or the reality that your retirement savings are worthless?" Mom flinched, and Dad's expression stiffened. "This isn't the time for blame," he added, trying to remain calm. "We are family. We need to get together and figure this out." I nearly laughed. Now he wants to discuss family? After years of allowing Adam to walk all over me? After firing me in the most humiliating manner possible? Now he was interested in unity? "You don't get to play the family card now, Dad," I responded calmly. "You made it pretty clear where your loyalty lies." He sighed deeply and ran a palm over his face. "I didn't know what Adam was doing," he told me. "Didn't you?" I shot back. "You may not have known the specifics, but you knew he was unqualified. You knew he was overspending. You knew he didn't show up half the time. And you let him take control anyhow." Mom began to speak, but I held up a hand to silence her. "Don't," I replied, shaking my head. "You're not allowed to defend him either. You both made the bed. Now you want me to clean up?" There was a prolonged hush. Finally, Dad stated, "Your mother and I are in a difficult situation. Everything we have saved is related to their firm. If we don't work something out, we may lose the house." And there it was. The real reason for their visit. It was not about Adam or the company. It was about money. I took a deep breath and leaned forward on the table. "I'm going to help you," I said. Relief flooded across their cheeks, but I wasn't finished. "This is how it's going to work," I explained. "I will acquire your company shares at their original value. That will allow you to keep your home and retire comfortably. However, there are some conditions." Dad frowned. "What type of conditions?" "First," I said, "you both sign a non-disclosure agreement. That means no telling anyone, friends, relatives, or reporters, what happened to Adam or the company. Second, you retire peacefully. No more tinkering or attempting to mend things. Third, the money is not free of conditions. You will receive a monthly allowance, and any big expenses must be approved by a trustee. Mom seemed to want to object, but Dad grabbed her arm. That seems extreme, he responded cautiously. Extreme? I repeated, reclining back in my seat. Dad, I'm being generous. I do not owe you anything. After everything that had happened, I could have gone away and left you to deal with the mess you created. But I am not doing this for you. I'm doing it because deep down, I still care about this family, even though you don't deserve it. That final line impacted more than I expected. I thought Dad was going to protest, but he just nodded slowly. Fine, he said. We'll sign whatever you need us to sign. Mom glanced at him with wide eyes. Leonard? It's the best we're going to get, he interrupted her. I stood up, signaling that the meeting had ended. I'll have the paperwork ready before tomorrow. Once you sign, the cash will be transferred within 48 hours. They also stood, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. This was the man who had always urged me to accept responsibility, admit my faults, and strive for improvement. And here he was, crushed and defeated, pleading for a bailout from the son he'd neglected for years. As they went, Dad looked back and said, "You're a better man than I gave you credit for." I did not respond. Words no longer meant much to me, especially when they came from him. When the door closed behind them, I sat back down and stared at the table for quite some time. This was hardly the victory I had expected. It did not feel like a victory at all. But it was required. Sometimes doing the right thing does not feel pleasant. It simply feels like a satisfactory conclusion. I didn't feel relieved or satisfied the day my parents signed the papers. Instead, I felt a peculiar sense of emptiness. It was finished. They had accepted the terms, and the money was on its way to them. I knew that was the correct thing to do, but it didn't seem like a victory. If anything, it seemed like I was finally bringing an end to something that had been broken for years. But life does not allow for introspection. While my parents adjusted to their new financial reality, I had a firm to run, one that, for the first time, was fully mine. The transfer from the old company to my new venture went more smoothly than I had anticipated. Most of the personnel came over willingly, and the important clients stayed with us. It wasn't only about loyalty. They recognized the value of the relationships and mechanisms we'd established. If anything, the tumult surrounding Adam's demise had strengthened their faith in me. They realized who the true driving force behind the organization had been all along. One of the most significant adjustments I implemented was how we worked as a corporation. I had learned a lot from my blunders in the past, particularly regarding honesty and communication. Under the previous regime, decisions were frequently taken behind closed doors, leaving people rushing to adjust without a clear explanation. I wanted to do things differently. We began holding weekly all-hands meetings where I lay out everything: progress, challenges, and impending goals. No fluff, no business jargon, just plain talk about where we were and where we were going. The first few meetings were slightly awkward. People were unaccustomed to that kind of candor, and I could see some of them were waiting for the other shoe to drop. But, over time, they began to relax. They began to trust me when I claimed we were in this together. One of the most pleasant moments occurred around a month in, when one of the senior devs approached me after a meeting. He'd been with the company for years, one of the silent workhorses who got the job done without making a fuss. "Marcus," he began. "I just wanted to thank you. I've been here a long time, and this is the first time I've felt that someone is truly concerned about what we're doing." It took me off guard. I didn't know what to say, so I simply nodded and said, "That means a lot. Thank you for staying with us." Those brief moments reminded me why I was doing this. It was not about proving something to Adam, Dad, or anyone else. It was about creating something meaningful, something people would be happy to be a part of. By the conclusion of the first quarter, we had achieved not just stability but also growth. Revenue was increasing, client retention was at an all-time high, and we had even begun bringing in new business. The team was electrified, and the workplace was alive with a level of excitement I hadn't seen in years. One day, as I walked through the workplace, I overheard two employees conversing by the coffee machine. They didn't notice me, so I didn't interrupt. "Honestly," one of them admitted, "this is the finest thing that could have occurred. The previous company was a complete mess. I feel like we have a future here." The other person nodded. "Yes, Marcus gets it. He is not just sitting in his office barking instructions, he is genuinely developing something with us." Hearing that was more satisfying than receiving any award or accolade. It wasn't simply the numbers or the growth that mattered, it was the fact that people believed in our mission. Meanwhile, the old corporation was just scraping by. The lawsuits were stacking up, the stock was basically worthless, and the remaining employees were leaving as quickly as they could. Adam, from what I heard, was attempting to avoid the spotlight, But the harm to his reputation had already been done. He was no longer a name people wanted to associate with. By 6 months, the new company had established itself as the industry leader. We were not only surviving, we were innovating. We developed a new product line that improved logistics for small firms, and it grew faster than we expected. It felt like everything I'd been working on for the previous 10 years was finally coming together. For years, I'd fought to prove myself, to Dad, Adam, and everybody else who had ever doubted me. But in that moment I knew I didn't have to prove anything anymore. I had created something real, something that would last. And for the first time in a long time, I felt calm. It's been 3 years since everything went down. If I'm being honest, I still think about it now and then, not in a bad way, but in a way that makes me wonder how I survived it all. Despite the fact that it drastically altered my life, the entire incident feels like a distant memory. My new company, ours, is booming. When I say thriving, I mean we've achieved every goal I ever imagined imaginable. The team we formed after leaving the previous organization has evolved into something I am very proud of. We are not only lucrative, but also respected. People in the industry regard us as the gold standard, the type of organization that others strive to replicate. That feels good, not because of the recognition, but because it confirms that we are doing things correctly. But let us be honest, prosperity does not erase the past. Every now and then, I find myself going through old emails or looking at news headlines about the consequences. Adam's name crops up on occasion, usually as part of a cautionary story about leadership or nepotism. Last I heard, he was working at a low-level job to avoid detection. I don't maintain tabs on him, but it's difficult not to hear things when your name and his are still vaguely related in some circles. My folks have settled into a tranquil retirement. Mom occasionally sends me emails with updates on their new activities or the neighborhood potlucks they have started hosting. Dad, however, has been mute. I haven't communicated with him since the day he signed the papers in my office. I don't think he's bitter, but I also don't think he understands how to rebuild the bridge he burnt. And frankly, I'm not sure I'd let him try. It's funny how much perspective time provides you. When everything first started, I was so intent on proving myself, showing everyone that I was the one who deserved to lead. But 3 years later, I realize I don't care about it anymore. People who know and work with me already understand the type of person I am. I don't need to shout my triumphs from the rooftops, and I certainly don't need confirmation from those who question me. For those who are wondering how the quiet one came out on top, let me explain. While others were busy posturing and playing politics, I was doing the work. While they were making noise, I was planning. Because, at the end of the day, being the loudest or flashiest is not what defines success. It's about strategy, resilience, and recognizing what you're capable of, even when no one else does. The peacocks may attract attention, but what about the eagles? We are the ones who observe things from above. And that's the end of the story, or the beginning, depending on your perspective. Thank you for sticking around. Please let me know if you have any questions, thoughts, or tales to offer. My ex-wife and her wife want my son to call her mom, and adopt him to move to Spain. I firmly oppose, protecting my rights as his father. Hi all. Throwaway because my friends are not completely aware of this current situation. I, 35 million, was married to my ex-wife, 34F, for 7 years. 2 years ago my ex-wife came out as lesbian. This came as a complete shock to me. She and her partner were co-workers who had an affair since she joined the company a year before our divorce. We have a son together, 8 million. This came as a complete shock to me. I was heartbroken and devastated. I felt betrayed as I had spent 7 years of my life with this woman and it all felt like a lie now. When I confronted her she told me that she had to live her truth, and that she tried to suppress her identity because she didn't come to terms with it till she met her partner. When I asked whether she loved me she told me that while she loves me it's different than how she loved her new partner. This broke my heart even further. The divorce was quick as she did not want anything from me and we agreed to a 50-50 split of custody, but I decided to go no contact with her and handled the custody transfer process through my sister, 27F, whom I moved in with after the divorce. I sold the house and we mutually agreed that the excess money from the sale will be in a college fund for our son in the future. I could not bear to stay in that house anymore as it kept reminding me of her betrayal. For context, she introduced her partner as her work friend, and I believed her. I had no reason to suspect anything and they had several girls' nights, but I figured that they were probably using these as cover for the affair. For 6 months I was in a depressive state because I didn't know where I went wrong. But this is one of those scenarios that anything I would have done wouldn't have been able to make it better. This made me even more depressed, and the fact that all the vows and little things that she said at our wedding were all just lies trying to keep up a ruse made it even worse. The two people that got me through this state was my sister, whom I am eternally grateful for helping with her nephew and helping me while maintaining her career. The other person that got me through this was my college ex-girlfriend. Around 4 months after the divorce we reconnected at a reunion, and she really helped through the worst of it as a friend. Around a year after the divorce, we started officially dating, and I introduced her to my son. During all this time my ex's partner had been having limited interactions with my son. This was not because of me saying anything, but my ex-wife wanted him to adjust to his new reality. My son is in that weird age where he understands what's going on, but he doesn't really understand what's actually going on. If you know, you know. He understands that mommy has a girlfriend and that me and his mom are not together anymore. I'm pretty happy considering we didn't really talk to him about the LGBTQ+ stuff because we had decided that we can talk about this when he's a bit older, but I'm happy that he's come to terms with the divorce. Around 8 months ago, my ex said that she was officially moving in with her partner and that she was engaged. At this point I still was in no contact except brief conversations that concerned our son. She invited me to the wedding but I declined. They were planning to have a destination wedding in Spain where her girlfriend lives. She wanted to take our son to the wedding and he would have to miss school for a week since she wanted him to meet her girlfriend's family as well. I told her that missing school for a week does not make sense and that she should plan her wedding when he has vacation since she doesn't have a fixed date yet. She argued that most likely they won't have a date that will align with his vacations and that they are getting married as soon as possible. I relented and agreed since I didn't want to interact with her anymore and it was well within her rights to have her son at her wedding. The problem started when my son came back after the wedding. He was supposed to stay with me since we have a flexible week in week out custody arrangement. She wanted to take my son on her honeymoon so that he has a chance to bond with his new stepmother. I told her that she had already had 2 weeks with him since she had custody for a week before the wedding and that I wanted to spend some father-son time with him. I told her that it is well within my rights and that she should go spend some time with her new wife. She argued that since our son's interactions with her partner were limited because of her busy schedule, that this was a great opportunity for them to bond. I told her that she had 2 weeks for him to get to know her partner. She said that they were busy with the wedding and did not have time. I told her that I had taken vacation days for us to go to a motorcycle expo and build a Lego set, 2 things that my son absolutely loves. She kept arguing and I finally told her that the custody was placed for a reason and that's the one thing I will not negotiate on. She got angry at me and left. Me and my son had a great experience. I even got him one of those kid-sized motorcycles since he liked them so much. Over the next few weeks we returned back to our week in week out routine. One day I find that my ex posted a photo shoot of them and my son under a caption of #lesbianmommies. I thought that it was a post and it probably meant nothing, but it was showing them as a family and something about that did not sit right with me. When I got my son for the week I asked him if his mom was saying anything to him. He relented a bit but told me that his mother had been trying to convince him to call her partner his mom. This was a shock to me as I never expected my ex to do this. Then again, I've been wrong about these things before. I asked him if that's something he wanted and he told me that he is much more comfortable calling her by her first name and that he feels weird with calling 2 people mom. I told him it's okay and that he shouldn't feel pressured to do anything. I called my ex and asked her to meet up because this was serious and I wanted to discuss this. I confronted her about this and she told me that since her and her partner were married, it's only natural for our son to have 2 moms now. I told her that it's not okay for her to try and convince him into calling her partner his mom because she is not his mother. She doesn't have an active parenting role in his life and that any major parenting decisions require the 2 of us. She tried making an argument that since me and my girlfriend were becoming serious now and that eventually I might want him to start calling her mom. I told her even if we become serious I won't try and convince our son to start calling her mom, because he already has 2 parents and he doesn't need more. Then she dropped the bombshell on me. She told me that she and her partner were hoping that eventually down the line they can file for adoption. I'll still be able to visit and see my son, but she wanted her and her wife to have legal guardianship because they wanted to build a new family with them. I told her absolutely not and that our partners have no say in our kids' lives. She accused me of being homophobic for denying her the right to a complete family, and I told her while her life is her choice, our son's life has to be a thing that we decide ourselves. I ended the conversation there and told my son to tell me if her mother tries to force him to do anything that he doesn't want to do. 3 weeks later I found out that my ex had enrolled him in Spanish lessons that he told me that he hated doing. For context, my ex is Latin and her partner is Spanish, so they are more comfortable talking to each other in Spanish. We made the decision to raise our son in English because it made sense at the time as she speaks English better than Spanish and I don't speak any Spanish. When I discussed this, she told me that she would like her son to connect more to his heritage. I said that I don't have any problem with that, but we have tried this several times before when we were married and he had shown zero interest in it. She told me that this time might be different since he will have 2 Spanish speakers at home. I told her that I am in favor of bilingualism because 2 languages are always an advantage, especially for kids, but if he doesn't want to do it, there is no reason to force him to do it. Maybe try another language? She then accuses me of denying our son his roots and goes on a tirade of accusing me of denying our son his identity and coming back to me denying her right to a family. My girlfriend usually stays out of these matters, but she advised me to contact my lawyer and see what they can actually do. My lawyer told me that even if they send an adoption notice, I can contest it and it would take something exceptional like abandonment, etc., for my contest to get rejected. My ex keeps posting our son as a part of her new family and it's honestly started to trigger me. 2 weeks ago I interacted for the first time with my ex's new wife after the divorce. She contacted me and asked to meet up. She told me that my ex had finally started to recover from the social trauma of coming out and building a new life with her and that I am now getting in the way of happiness. She accused me of being emotionless and uncaring through our divorce and how I guilt-tripped her into agreeing to my demands of 50-50 custody, and how I should just agree to the eventual adoption in a few years because she has always wanted a son and that I will still remain my son's dad and I can still visit him. I told her that I don't care what her emotional state was during the divorce and that my demands were fair even to the most irrational person. I told her that if they want to create this image of a perfect family, then they should have another kid that has no connection to me. I feel like all this has started to affect my son more than anything. He is a lot less happier than he was just a few months ago as we had started to adjust to this new reality. For context, since I know this is going to come up eventually, the emotional trauma of my ex coming out is basically the fact that her family effectively disowned her after coming out. Her parents don't talk to her anymore, while my son has plenty of interactions with his maternal grandparents when he's with me. Those 2 combined make significantly more money than I do alone. However, my ex-wife makes less money than me, but her partner is in a senior position, so she has more stability. This is also an argument my ex-wife used when we discussed adoption, since they can then send our son to a private school and generally give him a better life. I don't know if this is a factor, but the recent elections may have caused this because they are worried that they might not be able to adopt soon, but they don't want to adopt my son now but in a few years, so I doubt this to be true. Edit. I posted an update now. Update. Hi all. It seems that my draft went missing somehow and I'm sorry for posting a couple of empty blocks. Original post is here. It's been crazy seeing everyone's reactions to the situation and I wanted to share a quick update with you all. First of all, I'd like to clarify that my son and I have been going to therapy since the divorce. He was doing quite well until the whole mom saga happened. My in-laws disowned her after she came out. They were not even aware about the affair when she came out to them. They still spend time with my grandson under the condition that they don't badmouth my ex and don't preach their views to him. They agreed and said that they valued a relationship with their grandson over any political view they might hold. I have been a part of every interaction that they have had with him because I was worried they might say something. Thankfully, this has not been the case. Her extended family has said to me that they have all cut her off as well, some for the affair and some for her being gay. Our mutual friends also cut her off because of the affair. All our mutual friends were my work buddies and their spouses, partners. I did not ask them to do anything. They came to the decision on their own. I was actually glad when she told me that she had made a friend on her own, as she used to complain about not liking her colleagues. We all know how that turned out. I'm pretty sure they're not planning to skip the country. I have all my son's documents and we decided it during the divorce because she was still figuring out where to go, and since I was moving in with my sister, the chances of them getting misplaced were low. I have also had no demands for any documents and she returned the passport to me when we came back. The whole adoption thing probably stems from the fact that my son has a very close relationship with his mother. The only times he has really complained to me is when she asked him to call her partner mom, and that she was making him do Spanish classes that he did not want. We did everything for him equally during our marriage, but I had to travel out of state to my parents frequently during COVID, because they were sick with pre-existing conditions and couldn't take care of themselves. My sister was on an assignment abroad at that time. My sister also agreed with this. Please let me know your thoughts. I listened to people and contacted my lawyer, who is also my friend, today morning. He told me the same thing as last time and that it would take something really unusual for the adoption process to go through like child abandonment. He also said that they a bunch of idiots that have no idea how the law worked. He also told me that if the whole, we want to adopt him, is a real thing and if she is talking shit about me to my son and I could prove it, I could get custody. This has not been the case as I've not heard my son say that his mom says bad things about me. This brought me a sigh of relief. I plan to contact my ex today with the following conditions. We both install parenting apps and document all interactions. No more mention to me or my son regarding adoption or calling her partner mom. No more posting images of my son as a part of their perfect queer family, because frankly, I don't want my son photos on the internet when he is so young and he can decide what he wants when he is older. I plan to talk to my ex in a couple of hours. Please let me know what you think about this. Final update. Hi all, so I talked to my ex today. She was busy yesterday and I wanted some more time to gather my thoughts. When we met, I put forth my demands. She told me that the parenting app idea seems fine and that she has no problem with it. She got sad when I told her to drop the idea of adoption and call her partner mom, as it's just not gonna happen. She told me that her family was pressuring her to settle down. I proposed after a year of dating and I did not know this, and getting pregnant so soon after getting married was not what she had in mind. She got pregnant 1.5 years after getting married. Is that soon, IDK? She told me that she was in the closet all her life because of her parents and that she thought marrying me would cause her feelings to subside and that she was happy until she met her partner. She did go through postpartum depression after giving birth, but I did not know that she didn't want to get pregnant so soon. She then told me, her wife and her, that the reason they wanted to adopt my son was because she wanted to start new. She then said that she was never really happy during our marriage and that with her new wife she could have the family she always dreamt of having. She didn't want my son to grow up to resent her for being a lesbian, as he doesn't have any exposure to people like her apart from her and her partner. Look, I have to be honest here. I don't know any gay people nor anyone in my friends or family is gay. We never talked about these things because it simply doesn't come up in our daily life, but that doesn't mean me and my son have no idea who they are, especially after the divorce. I told her that this is not going to happen and that he has had a lot of exposure to people from her community. I told her that seems like a bullshit reason for separating my son and me and that she is making up some random reason to make her seem like it is. After some arguing, she told me the real reason why she and her partner want to adopt my son. Reddit is crazy for their prediction abilities, like honestly, wow. Apparently they wanted to adopt my son because her wife and her are considering moving to Spain in few years. I told her that she can't do that and that the legal framework supports me and my rights in both countries. She told me she knew this and that's why they wanted to get me to sign adoption. I told her that she was crazy, that she in no way is able to do this as she still need my permission to take him out of the country as when she did when they got married in Spain. I also read a comment yesterday on the update and researched a bit on the laws regarding this, so I know this is not happening. She told me again that they have done their research and that this was to see if I would agree. In case I agreed they would consider moving, and in case I didn't because she doesn't want to be separated from my son. I again emphasized that this is not going to happen and that if she tries anything or says anything to my son, I will sue for full custody. She got sad again and told me that they wanted to check with me first. I told her, in what world would you expect me to give you and your wife full custody? First you divorce me, leave me a woman, and then expect me to sign over my child and act like nothing happened. I told her from this point on we will document everything, every interaction we have, and that if I even get a whiff of you trying to pull something I will sue for full custody. She got a bit scared at the idea of losing full custody. She didn't really consider me doing that and she agreed. I then told her not to paint this picture of a picture-perfect queer family that they are trying to do, because that is not going to happen. Our son has a mom and a dad that he spends half his time each with, not two moms. He is not your affair partner's son. He is your son and mine. If you want a child with her, you can do so on your own. I then told her that the courts are more likely to side with me than you in this case because of the thing you have been trying to do and the fact that I work from home and spend more actual time with him than you and your wife. I have been trying for him to have a stable relationship with both parents since the divorce because I don't want him to reset either of us, but if you try to remove me from his life, I will sue for full custody and deal with any resentment he has for either of us. I didn't want to argue anymore and I left the room. I secretly recorded the conversation because I wanted to have proof in case anything happens in the future. Honestly, Reddit, I have been very angry at my ex since the divorce. I have not shown it around her and my son because I don't want her to use this against me in any way and have been going to therapy, but I am still internally angry. The comments she made today about our marriage really hurt me even more. I have spent 7 years with this woman and her betrayal still makes me angry to this day. When I got home, I contacted my lawyer friend and he again reiterated that they would have to kidnap him. I asked him if there was anything else we could do and he said that the current agreement is very thorough. We have made sure of that. If I want full custody or not is up to me, but I have to be sure that I want to put me or my son through the whole process. I don't want my son to grow up without either of his parents, as that is just not healthy for him. That is why I won't sue for full custody now. If they are stupid enough to kidnap him, I'm sure they are not. Then the law sides with me anyway. I know what position her partner is at their workplace, so I know they are making good money to leave it all behind for no good reason. As for the passport thing, I have all his documents, and all things such as notifying travel, hospital visits, and others are already in the signed custody agreement. We already have a legal framework for all this. I am not going to sue for full custody now because I don't want that for my son. My ex-wife is still a good mother and loves him, and he enjoys spending time with her. Plus my son is the type of person to openly voice out what he does not find okay to me, so I will know if they continue any of their nonsense. On a more positive note, y'all, I'm not against Spanish lessons, but he doesn't like them. I was just suggesting that he try some language he likes. There are other languages out there. I didn't say it to my ex then, but now I know that she was trying for him to learn Spanish because of the Spain thing. Thank you to everyone for their support, it really helped me with understanding the problem. Holy shit though, I didn't even consider her considering moving to Spain until I read the comments. Y'all are great at this.